Brothers and my sisters, this is Brother Minister. Tune in to Black Eyes TV for the realest talk online for the liberation of our people.
This is BLACKICETV7. The last obelisk. My mission is complete. Yeah, Birmingham. Yeah. So take care of yourself. Yeah. The people, you see it, we're gonna see each other soon. Yes. Greetings, family. This is Terry Riggs, Mr. Riggs in the house. And we are on the second day of what we call about our parents' education and whatsoever. Hey, educational purposes with the NOI. And we've got one of our brothers that's going to be in the house for this event today, this show today, which is Brother Kane Day from the Manhood Academy. So he's going to go on and talk about his aspects and everything. But before we go in and we start talking about other stuff, I'm going to introduce my co-host.
What's good, people? What's good morning on this cold Sunday morning? God damn, it's cold.
God damn it.
But yeah,
once freezing, they said it was going to snow today.
Well, it's definitely cold enough to. I tell you that I've been out already and it's freezing out there. Getting these woolly hats and gloves time, all of that kind of good stuff. But big up to everyone joining us. You know the routine. Hit the like button as you come in. Subscribe to Black Eyes TV2. We'll be putting that link up in the chat. And as Riggsy said, it's all about education. You know, is homeschooling the new paradigm? Is it the way to go? It definitely takes a lot of stress off your head in certain areas, but I do believe it's a deep question. It's not a simple decision to make. I don't take it for lightly, so I know every parent has different situations to deal with, but it's definitely worth considering in this day and age. You get me? So I'm blessed to be bringing this on Black Eyes TV7 again. Yeah, man, we're looking forward to that. Big up to our brother Kane Day, as Riggsy said, from Manhood Academy. Big up to Consu and the rest of the guys, J Change. Big up to them and the works they're doing in the community.
So now we're just going to go into a bit of a dialogue as we always do before we kick in. And, you know, we're talking about new shows coming up. So I'm just going to quickly put up one show that's going to be coming up very soon, in a couple of days. So, you know, let me just quickly play the little advert for you, family, so you get it.
Not just celebrate.
Yeah. So we're going to go into it a bit. Hold on, let me just see how it goes.
No doubt. And again, you know, look, this is you, but I will let you know. Yes, people. support, they will don't ever serve you. We get true talk for the people. Them banking, reparations. What do we need? Do we need it? Where does it need to be set up? Are there any examples of it? We're going to be opening True Talk with that next week. Looking forward to that. I'm trying to sort out my brother from America, Jamal Milton, to come in and talk about the bank that they've set up over in Ghana and their digital currency, the Nubian Freedom Coin. So yeah, hopefully that can blossom into a big conversation on Tuesday coming up. Look out for that one.
So that'll be at 9 p.m. That'll be at 9 p.m. GMT time and 3 p.m. EST time. So watch out for that, because we're going to go all in and out of banking. We're going to talk about the history of banking, the present day of banking, and the future of banking. So, you know, it's a topic that we need to actually talk about, because we're always putting our money into this bank. But what are we actually doing with it? Or what kind of assets are we trying to receive? You know, what are we buying, the currency, you know, all that lovely jubbly stuff that's within the bank system and how the bank system works. And, you know, you have to go into the past to be able to clarify it and see how other organizations bank off this situation. So, you know, as you know, like if you have the opportunity, go and see that film, the McDonald's documentary film, which, you know, it tells you about real estate, you know, and how and then you could go into the film of banking, which was about real estate as well, you know. So it shows you certain influences and how they have control or have discipline in the fact of controlling the currency as well as working it with the stock exchange and etc. etc. So even in form of that question, please press the reminder button. It's actually up on Black Eyes TV, so just press the reminder button. Don't forget this Tuesday. Then we're gonna have episode 3 on ITV2, which will be the talking with the creatives, and we got special guests coming in. And, you know, I was thinking today I might put a little privilege for you to watch the Fridays one on the Black Eyes TV itself. So that'll be premiered later on today. So you'll get the opportunity to see that. So, you know, please press share, like, and subscribe. Brother Rich, anything else at this precise moment?
No, I'm trying to hook up some of our elders. I've spoken to Carver recently, Carver Kameen, our elder Patar Seeker, Ramo Tef, and the guys will be joining us as well. So we're going to bring them themes. I'm trying to talk to my brother as well for Leke. He's out in Africa right now pursuing his permaculture drive. So I'm trying to get a little hookup with that, so we might be able to get in contact with our brother. And you know, generally, again, I want to focus on how people can make the transition from here to wherever. That I think that needs to be the running theme for this year that I want to start bringing. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna play the second video, which give you a little insight of what was happening on Friday. So let me quickly play that for you, fam.
It is snowing.
Oh, my son's just come in telling me it's snowing right now.
So I am going back out in a bit.
Google or internet for you to just jump online and say, hey, I'm looking for this, type it in, and 100 things pop up right in front of you. You really had to be diligent about, how you found out your information. Initially, when I first got started, and I started with the screen printer lab, I found a guy who was a screen printer, And I went to him and just said, you know, hey, I've got this design. How much would you charge me to print it? I knew nothing about the business. I just knew I needed some T-shirts printed, and I knew that I needed, you know, somebody to print them. And
Yes, family. Yes, family. Yes, family. That was the introduction. We're looking for more creatives. Anybody that feels that they are creative, they've got a product or a service, and they want to do some form of advertisement, or they feel that they want to come on my show every Friday. I will put the link up in the chat to go to ITV. I said ITV, BLACKICETV7 ×2. So if you want to have the opportunity to be interviewed, please email us at blackicetv.com, or you catch us on all social medias on BLACKICETV ×2 or BLACKICETV, or even contact me on Instagram, Mr. Riggs, as in MARRIGGZ. Yeah. Or you can, catch us on Black Family First, or you can catch us on BLACKICETV7 Brother Rich. So we're on Facebook and we're on all other social medias. But yes, the show is all about the creativity, on how they began their journey, how they created the journey, how they create into making it into a business, and giving the limelight to people of creativity, because we do need to highlight our creativity people in the fact that they're putting the work within each community on a global tip. So there is products, and we've got some very interesting people coming on. As we got to next week, we've got someone that's coming on, as you saw at the end, which is to do with clothing and music. Because creativity extends into that forms of art and much more. So big up to the people in the chat. Big up to Kushti Cosmetics, as she's doing her thing. Invest and sponsor, buy black, live black, spend black. It's all about the black pound. So is Brother Rich still in the house?
Still here. Just looking out the window at this snowstorm that's going on right now.
So as we're still talking on the topic of homeschooling, how's homeschooling coming for you at this precise moment, this week?
Yeah, it's been fine, no problem. As I say, once you got the curriculum kind of sorted of what you're doing with the kids, then the stress does seem to roll off. You get me? Because I know what he's doing, and it's all nice and organized. So yeah, still pushing ahead.
So how are you feeling about the lockdown going on at the moment? Because as everyone's indoors, and it's what kind of strategies that people have to plan. Because I've been looking at going on a couple of the channels, and I stumbled on one channel where a lot of these American scholars will come together, and one scholar made a kind of a critical point, about the vaccine thing. And we have got the right to question whether we take it or not. We have the right to question, in the fact that we look at the past. Greetings of Big Brother Scattered Minds in the house. We have that questions, because we have to question everything today, because we know their past, and they haven't changed in their present. So why not question these things? So as we're talking about this in the forms of the parenthood and education for our for our children, in the fact of financial literacy. Many of our people don't teach our children, in the fact that some of our children, they get to a certain age, You know, their parents pass away, they pass a certain amount of assets or legacy to them, but because they weren't taught the financial literacy, they just blow the money. So what do you think about that, Rich?
Listen, financial literacy is always needed, so you can make the right investments and know what you're doing. You know, the same way you having a mind state to always investigate whatever the situation is, vaccine, homeschooling, investment, you know, moving to another country, it all requires research. Um, as far as going right back to your first question of how I'm handling the lockdown, again, this all depends on your mind state, your general routine. I personally I've had a routine with the kids for a hot minute now, so, and I'm happy with my own company a lot of the time, to be honest. So it hasn't really affected me in any particular way. And luckily, with the homeschooling thing, we started it just before the lockdown, before the coronavirus foolishness kind of thing really kicked off properly. So, you know, that wasn't my main motivation for doing it. So that helps me a lot, to just get on with what I need to get on with. But as I said, it's, you know, even in that process, it required me to sit down and, you know, every day I have to dedicate some time to researching what I'm going to either set him as tasks or future things I want him to maybe get into, or courses I want to sign him up for. So again, there's a level of responsibility that comes with certain things that you just have to take on the chin in it and be prepared to deal with, on a level at the end of the day. And obviously, as I said, if you don't know about something, you got to be in the spirit to push yourself to research and find out. You get me?
Yes, I just put the link in the chat, so anybody that wants to come and get involved, as we're going to go into the NOI at exactly 12 o'clock, which is exactly 12 minutes, and we can have a discussion or straight after the show,
Yeah.
their dialogue. So if you want to come in the house and you want to come and have a conversation with us and let's talk and let's build, please come in and have that talk. The link is in the back chat. The link is in the chat, which I've just highlighted. So if you want to come in and have a conversation before or after, please come in. Bless your presence. If you feel that you want to promote your stuff, please come in. We have a few people in the house. So if you want to jump on, quickly come and jump on, have your say, or come and have your say after the show on the NOI. And a few people, because there's even there's a guy that's got a fantastic book. He's got some fantastic books for the educational system, called David Simon, and he's going to be on that panel, and he's going to be discussing his books and the curriculum for the educational curriculum. So we can discuss on that and see what kind of things that we can implement, like even on the factors of Manhood Academy. We're always looking for more advice and more things that we can able to tackle with the parents so that we can make a better future for our children.
And that's it. It's always about, again, with the homeschooling thing, it's about tailor making the education to your child. So whatever their needs are, they may be academically inclined already where you don't really have to push too hard, but there may be other aspects of them that you want to improve upon, whether it's their character building, their history of Black people and our achievements. But again, it's getting into the mind state that you are in full control. Because I think even when you take your kids out and you start homeschooling, a lot of parents are automatically going to still operate off of the system that they know, as far as the normal education system, GCSE levels and all those kinds of things. And again, it's important to remember that depending on the age of your child, if you still want them to go into higher education, then they will have to have a certain level of GCSE. So whether or not that means you set them only GCSE work and keep them on that same pathway in whatever the subjects are, because I think you need 4 to 5. I'm not sure that can get clarified. I'll find that exactly. But it's 4 to 5 GCSEs to get into higher education, college, university, and such. So even if you're homeschooling, the option is still there to register your kids to do exams, or obviously you can set them work that is still GCSE kind of current classroom level work. But the point is that it is in your hands, and there is no set way of doing it. And for me, basically, I'm on a thing. I want I've tried to keep my son, who's 13 at the moment. I'm keeping his maths and English on GCSE level, and then all his other subjects I'm constructing as and how I see fit. That's how I've basically chose to do it. But again, it's keeping that mind state that you're in full control, and there is no right particular way to do it. It's tailored to your own child and how you see fit.
Okay. Yeah. Again, just a side note: any musicians or any music artists that want to put their videos up, we have BLACKICETV7. So if you've got a music video and you want want us to help you promote it, please send it in to blackicetv@gmail.com, or contact us on any of the social medias, and we can display your music on BLACKICETV7. So I'm going to put that in the chat. And you know what? While we've got a few minutes, I might play one of Jamal's songs for the family, just to get an insight. Hold on, let me put this first in the chat. And that is the email. So what I'm gonna do now is play one of these songs, so you get an insight on what kind of things we're looking for. And at the same time we're putting up your music videos, we can do individual interviews on the channel, which will interview you and play the video at this at the same time, or around I'll put them separate, in the fact that we need to promote our music artists with good music. So I just want you to give us an opinion, an understanding of this song, and give your reviews and put your comments on this song from a guy from the States whose name is Jamal. Let me get it up.
Big up, Natty.
May you manifest every heart desire. May you manifest every heart's desire.
Oh, I saw that sound out.
Judicial systems and politicians, the wicked prey on the innocent, poverty-like conditions. Popular protocol, populate propositions. Your whole existence is probably out the picture. They out to get you. Foreign DNA in your mixture. Never thought I'd be touring CLA with these lectures. Made the elixir for the people to paint a picture. Clear as day in their brain. We created the scriptures. Genesis, Deuteronomy. Who could rhyme with me on the subject? Keeping their eye on me. Whole society know what's up next. My sobriety flows entirely for the upset. Suppression chasing the truth. Back in the booth, school of coons in the coop, take them back to the roots. I'm a star like a monologue, not jigaboo. Coming hard, you should know the guard higher than you. Couple rappers in the game that I'm trying to chew. Couple countries on the plane, ain't I'm trying to view. I'm divine, you divine, what you trying to do? From my mind to your mind, let's align the crew. Cause every line is a sign, just combine the two. May you manifest every heart inside. Hey, may you manifest every heart's desire. Hey, hey. The generation of change, no longer we see meditation is strange. Maybe in different lanes, but the destination the same. Future seeing the wave, you hella late in the game. Gotta deal with the pain, repeating it is the same. Who protecting the culture? Who deflecting the vulture from scooping up all the folks up? Who you respect the most, influenced by and promote? Cause few and few of our role models moving and still a spoke of. For you there's no love. Black civil rights movement got you confused with the rules of the illuminated, like who's related to who. Since the age of 2, made a fool what they say in the school. Don't pertain to you, tame the truth, they playing it cool. Since the age of the noose, we've been making the news. Crooked cops running blocks now, spraying your boo. When the semi on the Glock now, aiming at you. When it pops bullets, you not gonna be able to chew. May you manifest every heart's desire. Young, hey you. May you manifest every heart's desire. Hey, hey.
Yes. Big up to Jamal Milton. One of the baddest MCs, conscious MCs out there. I rate him all day long. Get me? And he's doing real works. Look out for him coming on the show. Hopefully he'll be part of the True Talk reparations and banking conversation, but we'll definitely be having him on as a creative, doing the thing, chatting with Mr. Riggs at some point as well on those aspects. But shout out to all the conscious artists trying to make a difference and uplift the people with their music and art contributions.
Yep, and that's what we're talking about, the creative mind, because it's our creative mind. Once we have control of our minds, we're able to do many things. Don't let people take control over your creativity. And as you know, in the world we live today, every university, every school, every college, every course you do is someone else's creativity that has been put on paper. So you got to understand that it's for you to take control of that, be in control of your own personal destiny. And that's what life's about. You get me? So
most definitely.
Yeah. So and again, we're always asking for people once again, if you feel that you want to create a show on the BLACKICETV7, please do so. If you feel that you could create a comedy show, you could create an art show, you've got something to talk about, you want to discuss, or there's people that you want to actually see. So, all you have to do is email us on blackicetv7.com, and you will get back to you and we can discuss, because this is the people's channel, for the people, by the people. So we're trying to do as much as possible. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
While you're doing that, Rich, just talk to the people while I'm just going on to see if the show has begun.
All right, cool.
All right.
The routine, people, hit that like button, share the link out. And again, after this conversation that we're going to be streaming from the NOI, we will be putting a link up. So if anybody has any thoughts, feelings they want to express live on air, feel free, take the link, jump on after the fact and have your say. I'm looking forward to this piece of information. I got a big up Nation of Islam. They've been bringing some interesting conversations.
Good morning, good evening, depending where you are in the world. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, community question time, a forum for intelligent discussion. So, as demanded by you, we will be delivering part 2 of the subject is home education, the new learning paradigm. Because we've got so much to get through that we wasn't even able to cover last week, and we are of a limited amount of time, I'm just going to give a short introduction to each of the panelists, and we're going to just jump straight into it. So one of our panelists for today is Brother Kehinde Ogunlabi, who's also known in the community as Brother Cass. He is a senior management teacher. He also delivers teaching programs in Nigeria. He is also the co-founder of Manhood Academy, which is a rites of passage program that deals with the development of our boys and our teenage youth. So please give Brother Kehinde a virtual round of applause. Our next special guest and international panelist is a beloved sister from all the way from South Africa. Nkosazana Ndlovu is a Pan-Africanist, an activist for African empowerment in various fields. She is also the managing director of Kangisa Educational Services, which delivers a learning program in institutions and in the home. So please give our beloved sister all the way from South Africa a virtual round of applause. Next, from the UK, we have David Simon. David Simon is a director of Simon Education. He is an author. He also delivers an online curriculum and a virtual school that is grounded in the foundation of a knowledge of self to inspire the learning value within the child to unlock their natural genius. So please give our brother David a virtual round of applause. And returning to our panel are our other international guests, the dynamic duo, husband and wife teaching team. We have Sister Shahida Mohammed, who is a director of Mama's Mathematical Science and Engineering Academy. These learning programs bring about the advanced learning and development of our children. So please give Sister Shahida a virtual round of applause. And her beloved husband, Dr. Shahid Mohammed, who is affectionately known as the Maths Doctor, is an international maths teacher, instructor, and professor. And through innovative teaching and motivational speaking and the creation of appropriate educational products, he has successfully raised the learning attainment of our youth. Please give Dr. Shahid a virtual round of applause. Now I'm going to hand over to our host of the day, who is a brother who founded an independent school to successfully educate our young. He has also launched and established various other learning programs in business, for doing for self, entrepreneurship. He has also launched life coaching and mentoring programs for our youth. He is a spiritual teacher. He is my brother, your brother, our brother, the European regional representative of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, Student Minister Abdul Hakim Mohammed. Please give our main host a virtual round of applause. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Brother Hakim. Many thanks to you for introducing this program this morning, and a warm welcome into our panelists and also to those of you in Zoom land and Facebook land. Warm welcoming to you all from the United Kingdom this morning. And I obviously wish I was where my sister is in South Africa to enjoy some of that rich vitamin D and the beauty of South Africa. However, outside my window this morning, the snow is coming down. However, we're going to make the best use of a warm home as we're on lockdown and proceed with what we're here to discuss today. So just before we get going, everybody, if you can give our panelists a warm welcome with a big round of applause for taking the time out wherever they are in the world, from Chicago to South Africa and doubling back or circling back here to the United Kingdom. So with that said, we wanted to really focus today on solutions for those of you who are desirous of engaging in homeschooling and really go into the nuts and bolts of homeschooling. Welcome, Sister Shahida. We want to go into the nuts and the bolts of homeschooling. And this is what brings me to my first question to each panelist to get us going today. And what's interesting about this period of time is all and sundry are being forced to use their home as a base for their life's operation. You know, whether it's education, whether it's business, whether it's nutrition, your home now, your place of abode really has to become your castle. It really has to become your palace. It really has to become your launching pad for your life. We've all been forced to do it. Those of us who weren't already doing it, we've all now been forced. And there's no need and no reason for us to go stir crazy at home. We've just really got to restructure our homes and make our homes fit for purpose during this time, particularly in the United Kingdom, where we're on lockdown. And I can see Brother Kahinde, Brother Cass, you know, he's gone into Afro mode, beard and Afro mode. And again, I was fortunate, you know, I was nearly in Michael Jackson land with him earlier on this week, but I was fortunate enough to invite my stylist. I don't have a barber anymore. I have a stylist. So my stylist came and treated me to a well-deserved and well-needed, you know, haircuts. And which, for instance, for me, him coming to my home and cutting my hair, it caused me to now say, I'm never going back to a barbershop. This is the new normal. I like this. Don't have to listen to the nonsense that sometimes is said in barbershops. Don't have to waste time getting tickets, you know, trying to find somewhere to park. So this period of time in which we've entered into is forcing us to really justify the amounts of money we pay for rent, the amount of money we pay for mortgage. You know, the mortgage and the rent is much more justified if we're doing all of the things that need to be done that helps to shape our lives and the lives of our children. Agreed? So the next question is, for those of, or the question to all of my panelists is, if I'm interested, if I had young children, or based upon circumstances, I'm now being forced to homeschool, and homeschooling is something that is novel to me, something that is new, or something that, you know, has been forced upon me now, and I'm forced now to engage in homeschooling. Does parents, or do parents need to shape specific, bespoke curriculums for the needs of their children, or is there just one curriculum that fits all? So I'm going to start off first and foremost. I'm going to go all the way to South Africa, and I'm going to start in South Africa. Where's my sister?
Nkosazana, I'm here. Greetings to everybody. Let me undo my video. Greetings to everybody. Very crucial question that you've raised there. I'm going to speak on the scenario of perhaps our country, and then I'm going to move to what I think is a trend that's happening globally. In our country, in South Africa, homeschooling is another form of education that is legal. It's actually enacted in the Schools Education Act, in the Education Act of our country, National Schools Act. And so it's a legal form that has actually been legislated quite a long time ago. It's just recently gone through some amendments in the recent past year or two. However, I think because parents have been very afraid, if I can put it in that way, and probably feeling they're not confident enough to actually do it themselves. It's been going very, very slow. And I think the pandemic was then almost sort of compelled parents to then obviously, because children cannot physically be at school, to actually do it. But how it's happening now is that you find that most of the schools, both our public schools and private and independent schools, are actually using the very same curriculum. Ours is called CAPS. We also have an IEP aligned curriculum, but our South African curriculum is called the CAPS. So what is happening is that they are following the same curriculum exactly as it is as the children would at school, and then they would just change the form of delivery, which is obviously via Zoom, online, Google Classroom, and all the platforms that are available that are out there. So it's exactly the same curriculum. Nothing has changed, but they're actually following traditionally the curriculum, but using a different format of delivery. But in some instances where parents have decided to actually fully homeschool on their own, in other words, they're not aligned to any school. They've decided to actually homeschool their own children. I've seen this very happening creatively, mostly in our white communities where the children are being homeschooled full-time. Their parents actually don't have a set curriculum that they're following, but they try to research on what is appropriate for their children to actually learn, and then be able to deliver that content to them at home. It also gives them an opportunity to instill a sense of value system that they want to instill to their children by themselves as parents. So in other words, legally, the definition of homeschooling is where the parent takes full ownership and responsibility and accountability for delivery of the education to the child. Education was originally supposed to be in that format in any case in the olden days, and obviously over time it evolved to where schools took that responsibility. But home education legislatively in our country is where the parent takes full ownership, full responsibility and accountability for the education, and then they deliver it to the child. So now what is happening is some of the parents are deschooling their children, where they're actually taking them out of the mainstream school, and they're actually delivering the education totally on their own. And then they do research, they look at best practice, they look at what's available there. They sometimes mix curriculum. So they will look at your curriculum in the UK, look at it in the US, and look at what the Asian countries are offering. And then they try to formulate their own content that will be appropriate, because they feel that there shouldn't be exactly a set, how do I put it? A set content that is there, but they can mix it in accordance to what by design is normally offered to the children to learn at that stage. So they become very creative, and they design their own curriculums. And I've seen this work, and it's actually quite powerful. And I find that some of the children who actually go through that process are far smarter, far able to achieve. They're able to, the parents sometimes, if they themselves have the talent, are able to unleash the potential in their children that even the schools probably didn't even notice it was there, because the school mainstream curriculum sometimes can be very rigid. And so it forces children to be taught in a certain pragmatic and very straightforward, rigid way. And so you actually miss an opportunity to pick up the talents of the children. You miss out the opportunity to see where they are strong, where their strengths are. And even in terms of creativity, you find that sometimes in normal classroom setup, you don't get to pick up the creativity of the children. So those parents that actually do it the untraditional way, unconventional way, you find that it has those benefits. However, to some parents, they find it a bit challenging because they don't know how to do it, where to start. So those that feel that they don't want to go the unconventional route will still feel comfortable to follow the rigid mainstream curriculum that's being offered by the different types of schools, whether public or private school. So it also it really depends on the parents' preference and what they feel would be best for their children. I think it's a growing education delivery mode of delivery now, and I think as the paradigm shift more towards homeschooling, I think people are going to begin to find their feet and see what works best for their children and what does not. But yeah, so there's those different types. There's the unconventional and there's a conventional rigid way of following the set curriculum. I'm not sure if I answered that question well.
Yeah, you did. You answered so many questions. So I might need to. No, you answered a lot, sis. So we appreciate the perspective from South Africa and what's taking place on the ground. Your perspective and what you shared is invaluable, because none of us have a homeschooling perspective on the ground in South Africa. So much appreciated. You've done more than answer the question. Appreciate you. And I'll be back, circling back to you very soon. So I'm going to go all the way to Chicago now, to the home of Sister Shahida and Brother Shahid. So as we've started with our sister, let's continue on with sisters. So Sister Shahida is, as an educationalist and someone who's been teaching young people and adults, obviously, but young people, your focus is young people. Do you believe, now that we're in a state, particularly if you transport your mind to the United Kingdom, where we're on full lockdown at the moment, and I'm sure Mr. Biden's trying to do everything in his power to avoid another lockdown in America. But if the pandemic continues to get out of hand, then you're going to be forced to come under another lockdown, which is probably the worst thing, for someone who's just coming into office, because the economy is going to tank and all other things. So if faced with these circumstances, that really is becoming the new normal, parents taking their children's education into their own hands, do you believe it is an imperative to have a bespoke curriculum for the individual needs of the child? Or should there be some kind of general curriculum? And as our sister said, it's just taught in a different way, taught in a unique way, but the information is the same.
Yes, sir. Well, assalamu alaikum, and thank you again for this opportunity, Brother Minister. And welcome. Thank you also for the panelists. I think it's very interesting, Brother Minister, when we say the term homeschool, right? And people are getting these ideas that we're bringing our children home, we're homeschooling them. But if we look at the word homeschool, that's where schooling starts. It begins in the home. So we have to get out of the mindset that I am sending my children to be schooled and educated by someone absent myself. So that has to be the new norm, but that used to be the norm, because compulsory education is not normal. Having children at the same age, learning the same thing when children learn differently, they learn at different stages, is not normal. So homeschool was the norm before they pulled our children from us. So we have to get back in that mindset that I am the number one educator of my child. And the teachers are merely assisting me in meeting my goals for my child. So I want us to kind of demystify that right there, because we get in the mindset as parents, we bore these children, we are raising them, and we don't know what to do with them. No, I don't believe that's true. Now, are there certain parents that have different levels of education? Yes, but like we were talking about last week, you learn right along with your child. So the new norm, you bring your child home, say you don't know what to do with them. You can start with a standard curriculum, but you may want to include other things. Like the sister said, the values of your home, now you want to implement life skills that they're not teaching in school. You want to implement, right? The prayer, the meditation, learning foreign languages, there's the arts, the music, there's so much more that you can incorporate that they're pulling out of schools that are very critical and crucial to education and child development. So even if you don't have everything that you want, you can now link up with other parents that are like-minded. Okay, this parent over here can teach mathematics. This parent over here can teach so-and-so. So this is where you pull the community together now. You pull those aunties and the uncles and the grandparents together to assist you with rearing these children and educating these children. So it doesn't have to be that you're doing it in isolation, but you can certainly do it no matter what level you're at. But the structure begins in the home, not outside the home. And I think that's where we're beginning to prioritize that now, because we have no other choice. And so that's a beautiful thing. But I think if you look at your child or you look at your children, start with the end in mind. What goals and aspirations do you have for your own children? And then, okay, this one is going to be a doctor. I see the potential in this one being an engineer. Now you pull those resources in your home and you get with other people, get with college professors. We're online now. So there's so much that you can do if you think outside of the box. We are being forced to be creative now in order to educate our children, which we were always supposed to do from the get-go, from the very beginning. So I think it takes us coming out of the mindset of what education looks like. This is where the new educational paradigm comes in.
Fantastic. And with what you're saying, what it is reminiscent of for me is, in order to achieve what you're saying, you need to have courage. Like, courage is so important, because I remember when I was at school, you know, having to have to ask a teacher, can I go to the restroom, and relieve myself, and him saying no.
Right.
Like, I've had in my time when I was a young boy at school, teachers say no to me on several occasions that I can't go and use the bathroom. So it wasn't standard practice. You need to relieve yourself, just put your hand up and just go. And these are the kind of restrictions that we have had to suffer up until this point. So when a child is obviously being homeschooled, as you mentioned, you know, to have double maths and then followed by double science, that's going to kill anybody, right? So to be able to, in between double maths and double science, have like some yoga or have some kind of, you know, relaxing engagement to prepare for another major assault on the brain, if you will, is very important. So much appreciation for that perspective of resetting the understanding of what educating a child really is, that it starts at home and then teachers are there to assist. And that process has been reversed, and it's time now for us to take charge again. Much appreciated, Sister Shahida. Professor Shahid, please talk to me. What's your perspective on this? You've been amongst so many children, you know, in a classroom setting and in a private tuition setting. Do we need bespoke individual curriculums for children, particularly for parents who are going into homeschooling now and it's a first for them? Or should they just draw from a general curriculum and do the best they can to apply it from a unique perspective?
Thank you, my beloved brother, Godfather of London. I appreciate the invitation again. We cannot play with education, just like we don't play with medical. In Cuba, the two most powerful and most recognized professions is the health and the education. So just like health professionals have to be qualified, they have to be on it in terms of professionalism, they have to be careful in what they do. It's the same with teaching. So parents, is no way in the world, Brother Minister, they can just haphazardly say, I'm gonna do the best I can. You know, I'm gonna do what I can to get by, because then you damage that child just like you would damage a patient in a hospital. A good parent has to be a chemist. Just like you take chemicals and you mix them together to produce an end result, if the wrong chemical goes in or the wrong amount of chemical goes in, you can blow up your house or blow up the lab. So parents have to look at as a chemist in terms of what ingredients do I need, what chemicals do I need to produce what I want to produce in this child. They have to be just as careful as a good chef, choosing the right ingredients in order to produce a beautiful meal. They have to be as careful and as diligent as a doctor to decipher what's going on with my child, where are they at right now, where do I want them to be, and what things do I need to bring them along. So yes, they do need to have a general curriculum that they can pull from, because Minister Farrakhan told all the educators in the nation that he wanted us to design a universal curriculum that had the supreme wisdom at the center, and that any student, no matter what their race, background, whatever, could learn from, grow from, and develop from. So that's the universal one, Brother Hakeem, that we need to produce as educators. But then the parent, until that comes, the parent has to do like my wife said, they have to be diligent enough, smart enough, brave enough to go outside of their home and see what needs they need for that child and then bring it in. So they have to be a good researcher, they have to be a good manager so that they can bring in what they need for that child. There's a science to everything. So there's a science to educating your child. So you can't just haphazardly do it. You can't just plug into the public school and say, here's a computer, here's a laptop, here's a tablet, do the best you can. Because my wife and I have seen people, students that are so-called supposed to be being homeschooled by the public school, and they're getting nothing but a computer and some programs with a bunch of texts and questions that are totally irrelevant and totally confusing and discombobulating to the child. A lot of it was mathematics, and as a math teacher, I was totally discombobulated. What in the hell are you trying to teach this child? So if I was confused and discombobulated and obfuscated, then I knew the child was totally obfuscated. So they have to be, like, my wife is very good at bringing in resources from outside into her school. So whatever she needs, she goes on the internet, finds what she needs. She needs a science kit, bam, find the connection there. She needs this to teach this concept. So the parent has to be that way. You cannot rely on the public school. You cannot rely on the private school. You have to take charge of your post, which is your children, and see what needs do they need specifically so that I can produce a guide. I hope
fantastic. Out of Chicago. So again, and what's so beautiful is what we're hearing from South Africa and Chicago is what you said, Professor Shahid, the universal curriculum where we can all draw from, that nervous system wherein we can all find connectivity. Thank you. I look forward to circling back to your household. Brother Davids, Simon, please, what are your views on the same question that's on the floor? Bespoke or general?
I think we need a generic curriculum based on our history, on Black history and the needs of our community. We need to have therefore we need a dual curriculum. We need to follow, here in the UK, we need to follow the national curriculum, but we need one that empowers us. And we need that universal curriculum, I would say. Then from that, we can develop that bespoke syllabus for our young people. Above all, I think we need to institute a parent-teacher training, and that's what we've done at Simon Education, because we started 34 years ago, and I didn't even know what homeschooling was, really. But we had to learn, because we've had over 6,000 families use our service. So we've had to learn. So hence, I've developed these, you mentioned about solutions. Parents kept asking me these questions. So we developed the first book we developed was How to Unlock Your Child's Genius, which is an 11-step program for a parent teacher. And it shows them, as it's been mentioned before, how we become research activists. I'll use the term research activists, so that we can develop the curricula. And we shouldn't really reinvent the wheel. We've been on this earth, when we teach Black history, we teach that we've been active in Africa and around the world for 250,000 years. We've got various educational models. We need a research team to look at those. And that's what I did with these books. I looked at, the guild system, the home tutoring system that we've had, the full-time education systems that we've had. And once I think the parent teacher looks at all these things, then they can choose the appropriate model for them. Not all models are the same. I find with homeschooling families, and we support, because I have an online school, so we support homeschooling families. Some parents are doing it very, very well, and they have what you call courage. You mentioned that word, courage. Other families I think they are struggling simply, and that's hence why they come to us, simply because they haven't gone through any training. We need to institute a training. So we need to say, this is what we call a parent teacher. And at the heart of that training is our culture. Our culture, or if you like, cosmology, encapsulates all of these things. Encapsulates, rearing your child. It encapsulates the science. Somebody mentioned about, we should see ourselves as science. And that's what, education was. So I would say we need a dual curriculum for now. We need to follow, here in the UK, we need to follow the national curriculum, but we need to develop a curriculum, a loose curriculum for ourselves, which parents can take and use it to provide for their child, a bespoke package or syllabus for their child. But eventually, we need a global Black education curriculum. There's no other way. Otherwise, we're going to perceive the world as how our oppressors perceive the world. I mentioned about teaching history. History is central for a Black, I would say, teacher training. Is central to it. I mean, we deliver teacher training in, I'm going off the subject slightly, but we deliver teacher training in West Africa and in the Caribbean. The most important subject is Black history, but not Black history taught in the sense of this personality did this one, this personality did that, but in terms of movements, in terms of industry, in terms of our cosmology, how we saw the world, Yoruba cosmology, Igbo cosmology, etc., etc. So to answer the question, I say yes, we need a dual curriculum for now. Eventually, we need a global curriculum.
Very good. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. When you were speaking, when you mentioned Black history, I think we need a definition also globally of what Black history is, because Black history must include Caucasian and other nationalities' history, because Europeans and others need to know what their place is also in history, and they need to know how many of their scholars and historians have been false and have been liars, and these individuals, I believe, we need to do a chronology of history going all the way back, and all of those who have inserted that which is false need to be exposed, and their work needs to be erased from what is popularly called history, because much of what we see as history is really not factual, and the timelines of what they call history is again not factual. So we need to have a global conference on true history, because history is as confusing globally, as the state of the world in which we are in. And I believe the misunderstanding of history is what has contributed majorly from an educational perspective to the confusion and to the racism, to the sexism, to all of that which is destroying the fabric of the world. I think you can find its footprint in a misunderstanding of history. So thank you, brother, for raising those very great points. And I'm appreciative and look forward to circling back into your home. So I'm going to go lastly where this question is concerned to Brother Cass. You teach on many different levels, Cass, and you focus in regards to the academy for Black males. I think you had gone over to the sisters also. But in regards to dealing with a multiplicity of attitudes and temperaments and needs, is it important now, if we're planning on becoming home educators? And I love what Sister Shahida said, because can you be a parent? I love what everybody said, but the point that sticks out to me is if schooling starts at home and teachers in the mainstream are really there and should be there to assist the parent, can you really be a parent if you're not a teacher, first and foremost? This is not a question, it's just something I want everybody to consider. Parenting and being a teacher should be one and the same. Do we need bespoke or general curriculums for our children as we're going down this road of homeschooling, Brother Cass?
Blessed, brother. Thank you for allowing me to come onto this panel. Definitely honored. Definitely we, like that David was saying, I think we need both. And also, I do definitely think we, eventually we do need a bespoke one. But at the moment, definitely we need both. When you talk about can you be a parent if you're not a teacher, back to what the sister was saying earlier, that we as parents are their first teachers. There's a book called The Fundamental, I think it's called The Fundamental Years of Childhood. This is from naught. This is from when the baby's born to 2 years old. And it actually says clearly in the first paragraph, in the first chapter, it said parents are their children's first teachers. So we are teachers by default. So the fact that we're teachers by default then we as a lot of the panelists said have to be brave enough and then take up that mantle and then say we're going to go full on with it. I'm glad David Simon's on here because I got my copy a long time ago, and this is a book I definitely recommend because we're talking about solutions. This is a book I definitely recommend. It is How to Unlock Your Child's Genius. When my parents in the 60s came here, it was difficult for them to manage a new country, hostile environment, and to raise a family. But they actually did it, like many of the parents on the panel did. So they taught me and my siblings a lot of things. How did they do it? They've done it with courage. They've done it with bravery, despite all of the stuff that was going on coming here into the UK. When it comes to actually for parents to say, what am I going to teach? Or what is going to be the curriculum? I believe you had Leah Salmon on your panel, I think it was the last time. And I remember Leah Salmon said, you know what? We just taught what we knew. And that's where you do your starting from there. We're not going to get into a situation where everybody's going to be a lecturer of whatever subject that, some of these teachers are. But we have to teach from what we actually know. Teach from what we know.
Supposing you don't know nothing. Supposing the parent doesn't know anything.
Well, with the fact that we got Google and Siri, it's going to be. I'm telling you, it is much more easier now for us to put together something for our children to learn. I teach across, across age groups from 5 all the way up to 18. I see good parenting, and I see parenting that needs improving. And even in the parenting that needs improving, they've got something. And what I say to those parents, you see that something that you have, you try and build on that. Because if parents just sit back and said they want to be a teacher, that can be a lot for parents to actually take on. Because what they're doing, they're looking at the fact that a teacher needs to have all this type of education, needs to go through teacher training for how many years. We're not understanding, like the sister was saying earlier, that we are the first teachers. So if you put it in that context, then you can start from somewhere. Because if you get to a situation where we're looking through the eyes of people who actually say they're in the school. I'm in a school right now. My house is a school. I'm in a room right now. This is a classroom. On the street, you could get street education. So we've got to understand that wherever we are is the school.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, brother Cass. I want to go back to your point, as Cass just picked up on it, Sister Shahid, in regards to you stating that we as parents are the first teachers. So can I add to it, supposed to be? We're supposed to be, because we're clearly not, but we're supposed to be. And for me, some of your panelists, you've mentioned the national curriculum, that we must, juxtaposition both of them, and draw from one and supplement it with another. Now, the national curriculum has been responsible for destroying, so many of our young people. And most of our young people cannot engage with these national curriculums because they're predicated upon white supremacy. Okay, let's be frank with this. The idea of the national curriculum is not necessarily to empower Black children. Okay, it really is to train them. So during a time like this one, wherein the systems in the world really is upside down, where the educational facilities have been forced to close and really direct parents to take responsibility for their children's educational needs. Isn't this the best time for us to all dump the national curriculum as opposed to keeping it in our toolkit? It's like, being at a disadvantage all your life. Someone's been bullying you, and then one day they're sick. you know, and you don't take that opportunity when they're sick and paralyzed to really put it on them. Do you understand what I mean? You know, you help them to get better. Now you're supposed to remember the amount of my children that have been excluded from school and have ended up in prisons and detention centers. Like the amount of young children whose lives have been ruined by the national curriculum. Is this not the perfect time, Professor Shahid and Sister Shahida, to dump this curriculum and be forced now to establish something for ourselves?
Yes, flush it in the toilet. We're taught in the Nation of Islam with the meaning of civilization, one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, refinement, and we teach all the sciences of life. So we don't have to pontificate over what we need to teach. We just need to come to an agreement as educators and then set up that national universal curriculum that Minister Farrakhan asked us to do. But definitely it's time. We're being given more and more opportunities now to come out of the Negro mindset of allowing the slave master to teach our children. And now Allah, God, is opening all the doors for us. So yes, we can dump that curriculum and then replace it with a real one, replace it with a universal one, replace it with one that has God at the center, replace it with one where our children are seen as gods, as seen as loving themselves. So definitely we need to do that. We definitely need to replace this enemy's curriculum. And if the parent is on their post, then they should already be able to see that this curriculum is not working for our children. It's not even working, I know in America, it's not even working for general American children because we're at the bottom of science, math, and almost everything compared internationally. So this curriculum is not even working for white children, regardless, or even for Black children. So we definitely need to go ahead and move to getting our own and doing for self.
That's a great point, because if, you know, countries in Asia are leading, you know, in science, in technology, and in business, and in other areas that are nation building areas, then if you look at America, you look at England, you look at where many of these European countries are on the chart internationally in regards to, you know, how well they educate their own. They are in the 40s, like UK is, you know, down in the 40s, you know, nowhere near the top. So what are we actually holding on to? Sister Shahida, are we actually saying that we want to be the 30th in the world in science? You know, the 25th in the world in literature?
Well, it was something that my husband said that was key. It's the root knowledge. You know, if we're not teaching the root that our Black children are mathematics, we created all of this. We created the sciences. So if they don't have the root knowledge that they are a God, children of the Most High God, then everything is going to be looked upon as difficult and challenging, and I cannot do this. So at the root has to be the knowledge of who we are, and that all of this education stemmed from the original people. So there isn't anything that they cannot master. So we have to have that at the root, because what they're teaching when you're looking at these Asian countries and the cultural revolution that they took back their culture, their identity, and that is infused in their education. So it is a culture when the children are taking the national exams that the streets are quiet. I mean, it's just cultural. It's not even, it's law. You're not making noise. You're not doing anything to disturb these children, whether you have children or not, because you take on the ownership of these children are yours. So it is infusing that culture and that standard in our children from they're very young, and then they can master it.
And additionally, they're actually educating their children to improve their country and their civilization.
Yes.
So what nation, what civilization, what country are we being educated to improve? You know, so you know.
Well, we know the way that the system was set up here was like the factory system. You are being educated to go work for someone else, not to work and develop your own, not to be a CEO, not to, you know, to own your own business. You are being trained, you know, that's why the classrooms are set up like little cells and they have little bells going off so they can train the mind of the children young. Okay, you're in that little cubicle. So we have to look at our definition of education to draw out.
Fantastic. So I'm going to shoot straight to South Africa because I'll go back to South Africa because, sister, we're coming up out of an apartheid, you know, system and structure. And the educational structure under apartheid was clearly, we are nothing as a people. So today, what has changed in regards to the national curriculum that during this time of the pandemic where we're being now forced to homeschool more, what is there really in that curriculum that we should preserve?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. You know, as everybody was in the panel was talking, I was actually thinking about, you know, in contrast what is happening in our country as well. As you know, in our horrific apartheid past, we had different curriculums. There was one called Bantu Education, which was meant only for the blacks. Blacks only education is very inferior. I think it covered almost nothing. But when you look at it systematically, the damage that education did over the millions of years, or let's say the centuries, is that it actually taught Black people to become subdued, to only become the labor force. It was actually designed to give Black people as basic of an education as possible, so that once they're post-school, they could only be in limited careers. Of course, because we know our history that we were not allowed to do many jobs. There are many skills we couldn't do. We could only be police, nurses, and teachers, civil servants. That's our parents and grandparents. And then we couldn't do things like IT, medicine, pharmaceuticals, and etc. So you find that with the older generation, you still find that impact. Remember, they were schooled in that way. That impact is still there. So they still that culture even now to our children and grandchildren that, you know, you just need to study, qualify, and then go and work for the white man. So it's very much there because it was almost like what do you call it? Like a systematic brainwashing, if I can put it like that. And it hasn't really left. It hasn't left the generation. So you find that if you come, obviously over the years, I think in post 94 when Mandela took over power, there was a need to obviously synchronize the education system and make it the same across. But I still find that still today, there is that serious disparity where the public schools of both government and obviously for whites, blacks, colored, Indians, and all the people in the country, are all aligned to the education system. But you still find that the children in the Black communities, in the townships, in the rural areas, are still caught up in the past. I'll give an example of what's happening now, which really breaks my heart so much. That's why I'm doing the work that I actually do. With this homeschooling that's going on now, when the schools shut down last year when we were in level 5, and then the schools were obviously staggering, when you drop from one level of the lockdown to the other, schools were opening in a staggered approach. But we found that from day one of the lockdown, all the white kids were obviously carrying on school like nothing happened. They were on Zoom, they were on Teams, and they were carrying on. The reason why that was possible is because obviously they have access to data, access to devices, they're privileged, they have everything, they can afford anything. So life carried on. Of course, even those communities in the Black community that can afford, like for example, the children of professionals, etc., who also happen to be in white schools, remember, that happen to be in the public schools that are white, or in the private schools that are white, were privileged to carry on. But all the schools in the Black communities, in the townships and the rural areas, they were not able to do school at all, purely because of access. So it comes back to the issue of the digital divide. It's a real threat. It's a real situation. And so remember, we are in the majority in terms of numbers, but you find the minority have more access, have more privilege than the majority. So what that does in the long term is that in the long term, the cycle continues. When these kids finish school, they finish post-matric, the white kids are going to be over them because they were able to get educated, they were able to have access, they were able to carry on life as normal. And these children, what is happening now, there's been a couple of media reports where, because they have not physically been going to school, because there's no infrastructure for them to do online learning, they are starting to now drop school because they are discouraged. The grade 12, which is our matric, the last year of school, we're writing their final school exams last year. And towards the end of our lockdown, towards I think September, October, towards the end of the year, when they relaxed the regulations and the lockdown levels dropped, many of those children were not able to go back to school. Why? Because they've missed a whole half a year or more of teaching. And remember, for parents in the villages, they don't even know what data is. They don't have smartphones, they don't have phones, they don't have computers, they don't have laptops, they've got nothing. So what is happening now is that those children get lost in the system, and they're going to be lost for good. Because remember, once they're not able to go to school, they're basically lost in the system forever. So what happens is the privilege continues into the next generation, where you find there's those disparities. So we've raised this thing with government. Lots of organizations have raised with the government. And unfortunately, we haven't had a breakthrough so far, because again, in 2021, when we entered in another level of a lockdown, we're now on level 3. You find the same thing is happening again as exactly what happened last year. There's no improvement. The same situation is happening. The rural children are not going to school. They're stuck at home. They have no access. They have no devices. They have no data. They have no phones. They've got nothing. And then the privileged kids, which is the kids of black professionals, etc., and the white kids are carrying on like the rest of the world, like nothing's happening. So the same cycle is there again, continuing. So in terms of curriculum, I would say, in terms of curriculum, also going back to that, I find that not much has changed. Perhaps probably there have been some improvements over the years, but you still find that if you look at history and the things that the children are taught, it is still glorifying the Western system. So that brainwashing is actually haven't even left. They're learning about a bit of our history, but you still find that the element of an enslaved education, and the white man being the inventor, the person who's going to be coming up with innovation in terms of what's happening with the digital world, the 4R, etc. It's still in their mind. It's something that they're not capable of doing, because they're taught that everything is white, everything great is West. So you find that it really pains me, because we are 26 years or 27 years into a democratic dispensation in our country. And at this point in time, I feel we should not be in a situation where we have that disparity, where there's no similarity in education. There's that, we have a black government, but we still find that black kids are still disadvantaged almost 30 years since a black government is in power. So I find that, in fact, it's actually all over Africa, it's the same situation. So you find that the privilege, the more affording, they're up there, they're fine. And everybody else is lost in the system, and they don't have access. So the digital divide is real, and the pandemic has actually exposed the reality of the digital divide, and the fact that the inequality in access is still very much an issue. So yeah.
Very, very good. Thank you for your insight. Really appreciate you, because you're giving us a perspective that really is the undercurrent of all what we're suffering globally. So thank you for that. And you remind me of a song from Freddie McGregor that he sung years ago. His song was, "To be poor is a crime." And when you have a whole nation that's been impoverished, like, we have had to suffer for all of these years, as you said, whenever there's a crisis, we're always the first ones to suffer and be the first casualties. Thank you very much. I want to go with the same point back to Brother David. Thank you, sister, to Brother David, in regards to the damage that the national curriculum has done to our children, and the mere fact that inspired you to move away and focus on homeschooling. Isn't this the perfect time, David, to dump that document and for our educators to come together to structure a document that is in our best interest, first and foremost, self first, and going back to Trump's slogan, not America first, but our children's best interest first. Can we do that?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that, but we have to do it responsibly, and we need a plan. Personally, I feel we need a 10-year plan. And because we need to have the publishing houses, we need to have our own publishing houses Some of the most powerful people in education are the publishing houses. So we
Can I stop you there? Can I stop you there? And just to insert this, you know, young Stormzy, brother Stormzy, he now owns a publishing house. So therefore, if we answer the questions as we're going along, you said we need a publishing house, then brother Trevor Hakeem and sister Sylvina, we need to contact Stormzy to let him know this time that we have entered into, we're desirous of restructuring the national curriculum, but we need a publishing house. Can we use your service to move ahead on our objective? So please continue, Brother Dave, because we're going to solve these problems as we go along.
Yeah, well, we need a publishing house, but we also need, you know, non-digital and digital publishing. Digital publishing is becoming more and more kind of like important, you know. So I think we need that because we need our own resources, because it's pointless just dumping the national curriculum and there's nothing to replace it with. So therefore, we also need to do an audit on our needs. What do we need as a people to gain power? It's as simple as that. I think Amos Wilson said, you know, education is about power. You know, he put it that simply. So we need that. And I think we also need training so that we can develop 5 key teachers in our community. We need the classroom teacher. We need the parent teacher. We need the community teacher. That's people like yourselves putting on this, Brother Hakeem, etc. We need peer teachers. We need to show children that they can actually teach and support as well. I think once we get those 5 key teachers, which we used to have, we're not reinventing the wheel. This is our history. The solutions, remember you said to me, we need solutions. The first place you look is in your culture for solutions. So, and then we're in a position to dump the industrial model, you see. But, you know, and if you look, and you know, I mentioned Black history, if you look at what Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture did in Haiti, the first thing they did was put up a universal education system. Maurice Bishop in Grenada, where I'm from, first thing he did, you know, the New Jewel movement is put up an education system. So education is part of the revolution, you see, but you need the apparatus, you need the ecology around it. Otherwise you end up in talk. And as I said, you know, I've been doing this, you know, I started 34 years and I used to be, you know, go to conferences and, you know, it's talk. You know, we need to set up, I mean, we have, when I started 34 years ago, I didn't have a publishing house. I have a publishing house now. We published 46 books, mostly on education. You know, how do you teach maths? How do you teach English? The teacher training that we're doing in West Africa, we've had to delve into bilingual. You know, how do we teach Fanti? You know, etc. How do you teach? We do teacher training in the Caribbean now. How do you know stop young boys from dropping out? You know, what's the statistic? Is it 38 million African children not in school? How do you address that? You cannot address it using the old industrial model because simply the African nations do not have that capacity. So you have to think out of the box, and therefore, if you focus on the 5 teachers, therefore it becomes a community response and everybody knows their role, you see. So I think it's achievable. It is really achievable, especially now. And you mentioned about the publishing houses. We put on this year, we put on the Black Book Festival for the UK. But children can not simply focus on phonics, but also on identity and comprehension, and see their place in the world and reorientate their minds. And that's what's key about education, the reorientation of their minds so that they can become critical thinkers. But to become critical thinkers, you must have, you know, true reorientation. So that's my answer.
Fantastic. So we're going to continue to work with this whilst we run 2 tracks. We have to be busy in ourselves, producing our own. So Brother Cass, just quickly on this subject, and then we're going to start to engage the audience.
Right, real quickly. One thing we have to remember is for years now, decades now, we've had our own curriculum in our African supplementary schools, but the community needs to support those schools more. My mum was one of the founder members of one of the oldest African and Caribbean supplementary schools in this country, which was called Kakai, that was there for 20 years. These African supplementary schools operate part-time. What we need them to happen is for them to operate full-time, but that is going to need the support of the community. If we're going to be in a situation where we're going to say we need this teacher for this or this teacher that, this teacher, then the community needs to step up and say, you know what, we're going to fund that. Instead of us going and renewing our Amazon Prime deal, we're going to take that money and we're going to fund our school. Instead of us saying, you know what, I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to go down and buy something that I don't actually need. We're going to take that money and finance our own community, because we've heard this thought. Yeah. With David, we shouldn't get rid of something that a lot of our people support, because we don't have anything to replace. So it should be something that is gradual. But if we're going to do it, let us be in a situation where if we've got something like this from the NOI, then our people need to support the NOI. Let's not get into a situation where, oh, I don't agree with what the minister said. We're not involved in all of that, because when the Grim Reaper comes, he's not going to be asking you if you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, or you're a Jew. He's just going to say, it's your time to go, so go. Just like when the oppressor comes and he says, I'm going to oppress you, he's not concerned of whether you recite from the Bible or the Torah or the Quran. He's just going to say, you are black and I'm going to destroy you. So what we have to do is put our differences aside and have a collective mindset, because that is what is holding us back. It's not money, because we generate billions in the US and even in Africa. In fact, I have to tell you this story before I finish. In fact, in Nigeria, which I love, but they got a lot of problems. In Nigeria, right now, at the moment, in the middle of the pandemic, the Nigerian government is taking money out of people's bank accounts to finance whatever it is they're financing. What on earth is going on? The Nigerian government brought over Kim Kardashian, paid her how many millions of pounds to open up something in Nigeria. What on earth is going on? So we have the resources, we definitely have the intelligence, but we need to have the will. And as soon as we have that collective mindset in the mind, then we can start getting into a situation where we can turn these African supplementary schools, which are part-time, to full-time. Then we won't have this issue ever again.
Fantastic, Brother Cass. They must have heard that, Kanye was divorcing Kim, so they said, let's get in on the action.
They must have.
So thank you for that, dear brother. And what I wanted you to also consider, Brother Cass, and to the panelists, I'm always a silver lining type of person. I'm trying to look for God's hand, the Creator's hand. What is the silver lining? What is the lesson I can extract from this that will bring me greater benefit, greater profit, greater advancement? And I'm looking, as I listen to my sister in South Africa, and I look at the issues that we are suffering in the Caribbean and in Africa. Is it time? I really want to just get a snapshot, David, from you, and then I'm going to go to everybody else. Is it time, David, for many of the educationalists here in the UK and maybe in the United States of America and throughout the Western world, is it time to take serious stock and consider are our gifts and talents better served if we return back to Africa and the Caribbean? Is that the way forward, or are we kicking and screaming trying to hold on to the West when it's crumbling around us? Are not brighter horizons waiting for us in the Caribbean and in Africa?
I think we can't romanticize it, because on a weekly basis, I deliver training to countries in West Africa with teachers, and the picture that they're painted of, their issues that they're facing, which we've heard from Sister Kosi. And also, I think we must also remember that basically we own this planet. We've been conditioned that Africa, the continent of Africa, is Africa. That's a lie. Europe was Africa. Europe was Africa. We had African civilizations. And
I was hoping you wouldn't go there, David. I was hoping that you'd have kept the question in the little box that I put it in for the purpose of this discussion. But you've killed it now.
No, I think, and one thing, like when we do Black History, one thing that we teach, Black History may be the wrong name, but for now, because it's associated with activism, we keep it as Black History. But 190,000 years ago, we left Africa and we went into India, we went into Arabia, we built civilizations there. And so really what I'm trying to say to you, and that's why it's good to study the work of, say, like Runoko Rashidi, is that we own this planet, and if we kind of like, because they've disorientated us to say, you're an ethnic minority. We're not an ethnic minority. We come from Africa. We come from this globe. I think Dr. John Hendrik Clark said that we've been around this globe at least 3 times before we came in contact with white people, So really, I think if we reorientate our minds and say, is it time, not simply to go back to Africa, but is it time to take back this world? The environmental issue.
I agree. I agree. And your point is very well made. However, for instance, we have a young brother here called, his name was Fuse ODG. He's a big Afrobeats superstar now. But Fuse was raised in the United Kingdom, and Fuse went back home to Ghana, established himself, came to London, and he blew up. Now he's returned back to Ghana and is doing tremendous things in Ghana. He's built a school with over 250 classrooms, like a mega school he has built in Ghana. He's not an educationalist where he will be one of the teachers in the school, but he has funded this operation to offer a facility for those in that part of Ghana where he is originally from. So I'm not disputing the fact that the earth does not belong to us and we are not the creators and owners and makers of the earth. I'm not disputing any of that. But by way of choosing, if you have a few £1 million, if you have an extra 30 years on this planet, if you have an extra 20 years, an extra 50 years, is that time better served trying to turn things around in an area in the Caribbean and basing yourself, or in Africa, not disputing the fact that the entire globe is your home? Yeah. I'm speaking about now the next 20 years, the next 30 years, the next 25 years or 15 years some of us will have on the planet.
Yeah.
Is it better served in Africa, Caribbean, or here?
Yeah, just a final comment, because I know other panelists would like to respond. I think as a strategy, what I've always done personally is that, yes, I always focus in the Caribbean or in Africa. We should do that. We should give it priority. We shouldn't simply be focused here in the UK. So we should have a dual vision, because if we have a strong Africa, we have a strong Pan-Africa. So you're correct in that. So yes, I would say yes. We should all of us as families, as communities, we should have projects that we're supporting in Africa and development.
Thank you for that. Shahid and Shahida, what are your views on that?
Well, I think wherever we are, we have to set up a beachhead, right? And then we have to extend and share best practices amongst ourselves. But wherever you are, you have to start there. Start where you're at, right?
Because what I'm thinking, Sister Shahida, is some of the children who are exceedingly problematic in America or in the United Kingdom, they may flourish educationally if they were being taught in the Caribbean or in Africa, but just have a blockage, if you will, in being taught in some of these areas in which they are born. And I honestly think the environment has to be conducive to learning. And if you are a keen learner, but the environment is not conducive to learning, then you can be presented as an idiot, you know, or someone who's dyslexic, where that's not the case. It's just your environment is not conducive to your ability to learn.
Right.
So from that wise, or on that wise, you know, should we not look and research our options a bit more? Because the environment might be playing a very significant role.
I think it does. And I think this is where long-term boarding schools can be an option for us, because if we had a school like that in the Caribbean or in Africa, and it was set up where we can send our children, this is doable. I do believe we have to start where we are. We have to, you know, we have to look at the reality of where we are, but this is why we have to make these connections now. And we can't, when things go back to normal, we can't get amnesia, because we're giving the opportunity now to think and to strategize, plan. But we do know the countries are going to open back up. The question now is, are we going to become, you know, brainwashed again? Are we going to become brain dead again once they do, and then get comfortable again being locked into the system? So I absolutely believe it can be done. I think this is where boarding schools can become efficient for us, Brother.
And thank you, beloved. And Brother Shahid, in regards to when you travel to the Caribbean or wherever you travel, don't you find sometimes you can thrive a lot quicker in a different environment than dealing with sometimes some hard-headed children in Chicago?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, to leave the concrete jungle and to go into the Caribbean, Africa would just be, I mean, on 10. As they say, it would just be lit, inferno. But environment definitely has an effect on learning. And that's why the minister said, what our children in these so-called ghettos, they miss that human quality, that human sensitivity. And that's why they have that thuggish, rugged type of beast-like mindset, because they're growing up in concrete jungles where they don't get to see a flower, they don't get to see a butterfly, they don't get to appreciate nature, they don't get to appreciate animals, you know, besides a pit bull maybe and a German Shepherd. But they definitely need that Caribbean and that African connection on so many levels.
Yes.
It's just a matter of how we can do it, how we can make it feasible, and how many can take advantage of that. And as my wife said, boarding schools would be a wonderful option. You know, besides a mass movement to the Caribbean and in Africa, which I would be all down for, to get up out of this damn cold Chicago. But yes, brother, that is definitely something we need to look at, is the environment. And a lot of our children are, I mean, not even just our children, children period. If you look at some of the madness that goes on in these public schools, I don't know how you can learn anything where you got to deal with crime, theft, vandalism, homosexual recruitment and gang violence, all this going on, and I'm trying to teach this person algebra. It's going to be a big problem. So the environment definitely has an effect, and the more we can create, the better environment, and the optimum environment would be the Caribbean or Africa. So I think that would be a nice option for those of us that can do it, and those that got to stay in the concrete jungle, we just got to make it happen with the homeschool in our own schools.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to jump over quickly to South Africa, then I'm going to go to the panel. The floor, Brother Hakeem. So be on standby. So the last point, Sister Kosi, you're on the ground in South Africa, okay? And there's been obviously a massive brain drain from Africa. Do you believe the expertise that is frustrated, that's languishing in Europe and languishing in America, you know, if some of that talent was to return home with the technical skills that you mentioned, that there's this dearth of this technical skills and technical facilities in Africa, if some of that talent was to return home, what kind of impact do you think it will have, particularly where you are?
Oh, most certainly. Thank you so much for that question. Most certainly, I think if we had to have the talent return home, would have definitely a different African continent altogether. As you know, that majority of our skill set has left the continent for various reasons: instability, conflict, poverty in some instances, extreme conditions that people cannot take. So some of the politicians and professionals and general society have opted to educate their children overseas, and therefore those skills over time are in the diaspora. They remain there. And obviously with many of our African people having been born in the diaspora, you know, with the skill set that you have from the education you've received there, you know, it's a reality, it's a fact that we have a lot of our Black community that's sitting in the diaspora all over the world, even sometimes in Asia as well, that actually has the skill. So I believe that if we have to rebuild the continent effectively, we can't do it on our own, because we find that majority of the skill that we have is still European skill from the white community and African community, etc. As well as what is happening now, a trend that I'm watching, which is quite a concern for me and many other Pan-Africanists, is the Chinese coming to, they look at that loophole and that gap, and they want to fill it. But you find that the so-called partnership is not so much to benefit, it's not so much as a win-win, though politically said to be, but you find that they stand more to benefit in the long term, where they, for example, they'll come up, set up infrastructure, they'll build infrastructure, build bridges, build buildings, build water infrastructure, engineering infrastructure, etc. But you know, in the long term, I honestly believe somehow it's another form of colonization in the end, because once they own all this infrastructure that they've actually invested in our continent, they obviously there has to be something in it for them in the long term. So I still believe that if we had that skill from ourselves and from our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, Africa would look far more different. So I think we're kind of more desperate right now because the skills that's exited the continent, or it's not there enough. So we sort of are prone to, or subject to abuse, in the sense that, you know, everybody comes here to sort of help us, but you know that they stand more to benefit the long term than we actually do. So I honestly believe that. In fact, Dr. Arikana, I'm not sure if you guys know Dr. Arikana. She was former AU ambassador in the US, deployed by the AU in the diaspora. She has she believes very strongly in this. She has an organization called the ADDI. I would think some of you would know about it, that she wants to use it as a platform to bring back the skill back to the continent, to rebuild Africa ourselves, because nobody else can do it for us than ourselves. So I strongly believe that definitely what you're asking is true. That's what we need. But you know, we also need internal people like myself and many other colleagues in this space who want to rebuild by incubating the skill internally. I'm busy right now trying to get a lot of technical skills from Japan, from the diaspora, from everywhere in the world, to try to teach children the dynamics of coding. My own children do coding. They're kind of doing Python Pro right now, which is a very universal, powerful program that Facebook and Uber and all those big firms actually use. So that, you know, even to start at an early childhood development stage. And right now, as a homeschooling program, is a perfect time to actually do it. But definitely, the partnership from the diaspora is exactly what Africa needs because of the shortage of the skills that we have internally.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. And lastly, Kayinde, annually you would leave London and you would go and spend the summer break in Nigeria and lend your teaching skills and your expertise back in Nigeria. Do you think that the areas in which you work, if you and 10 others was to spend longer time, you know, the areas or the change that you're trying to bring about in the area in Nigeria that you work and support would be a lot more rapid and could reflect back, you know, positively to the United Kingdom or back to the West?
110%. And I've been doing it now for the last 10 years, in fact. Last year was the only year I didn't go because they closed it off because of, you know, the COVID, and I've taken my family back there as well. One thing I also will say is, any of my students that I teach that are from Turkey, in this country here, they go back to Turkey every year. It's like a rites of passage, and that's something we have to understand. They go back every year. Doesn't matter what holiday it is, they go back every year. So I encourage parents to take their children back. But I definitely think so. And like I said before, it's a collective mindset. There's about 2 or 3 occasions I have encouraged teachers and educators from the UK to come back with me. They're Christian, I'm a Muslim. We go back, we're using our skills. It doesn't matter what religion or what mindset we can.
Cass, I think you would find if you take some European teachers over to Nigeria with you, when it's time to go back, you will find they will stay. Okay?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story right now.
They will not exercise their return ticket.
No, they won't. And that's what, and a few of them have. And that's something that we have. What we've got to do is embrace ourselves, because there are people. We've got to embrace ourselves, forget about what we believe is Africa, and understand what is Africa today. I do agree with David to an extent about, you know, the romanticizing, because we've got to understand that when we're there, that certain things are not as they seem. But I cannot stress it enough that the skills that we have learned collectively, if we do it more often, it will definitely be a rapid.
And again, just to close off this point, and before we go to the audience, you know, I read a book once, and it said, if you have not traveled, you have not opened the book of life.
That's
so
right.
Therefore, just the travel, the experience of going on a plane and then living under different circumstances. And one of the things I've found, dear brother and sisters, is the human being is exceedingly adaptable. And I've traveled to places before, and I wasn't pleased with the accommodation. It looked so good, you know, before I got there. And when I've arrived, it's just like somewhere at the Wild Wild West, right? But because there was no option, I found the more I just calmed down and settled down, within 2-3 days, when the option came to move, because I was now settled in my mind with the ants, with the fleas, whatever it was, I acclimated myself, and it was fine. And I think the problem is because we're so used to a particular way of doing things, when we're in a so-called strange environment, we find it difficult. We don't spend long enough. Let me say that. We don't spend long enough. So just a 2 weeks here, or 3 weeks there, or 10 days there, it really isn't good enough. You know, we've got to do a good 6 weeks, a good 2 months, a good 3 months in Africa and in the Caribbean to really get to know the place, so that we can really develop an affinity, you know, because from my perspective, it's a part of the whole homeschooling process to travel with your children and try to find somewhere that really will serve as a destiny for you and them, and really answer the question, what is my purpose in life? Because once that question of purpose has been answered, then the educational curriculum, I think, will just flow from there. But without knowing the purpose, then it's a bit of hit and miss from my perspective. Panelists, thank you for answering those questions that were put to you. And we're going to now go to my co-host, Brother Trevor Hakeem, and he's going to go to the chat room and engage with those who are online. So big round of applause to those who are panelists for what we've extracted from them thus far. And over to you, brother.
Thank you, Brother Minister Abdul Hakeem. To your earlier point that you made regarding a creation of a historical timeline that charts the footprint of human achievement. And so you can see the original people's history and European history in context to each other. Brother Paul Labinna has actually produced that timeline. So I think for part 3, we will have the great educator Paul Labinna on for part 3, sir, because he has produced that great timeline.
Fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. Go ahead, sir.
No, absolutely fantastic. I look forward to part 3 as a very juicy entree. Thank you.
Yes, sir. To our Zoom audience, if you want to engage live with the panelists, if you're not too sure how to do that, if you go to your Zoom control panel on your device, depending on what your device is, you can see 4 small dots, or it may say menu or more. If you hit that menu or more, or those 4 small dots, a drop box of options will come down, and then there will be an option to raise a virtual hand. If you press that option, we'll be able to recognize you, we'll be able to unmute you, and then you can engage live with the audience. But I don't want to ignore the participants that have been in the chat room, because again, it's been another lively discussion, a kind of a sub-event of community question time in our chat room. And one question that was posed to the panelists is, can you be a teacher if you're not a parent? Teachers are expected to teach and parent, but if you don't know how to parent, nurture, and support, can you teach effectively? I don't know whether that's
the person who asked the question.
Teacher.
I think, Brother Hakeem, I think the person who asked the question really answered it themselves. But we will, you know, if they had just asked the question and stopped there, then it would have been fine. But in re-emphasizing the question, they actually answered it for themselves. But we will, you know, present it to the panelists for a couple of you would like to have a stab at that. In no particular order.
I think if you, well, yeah, I agree. The person who asked the question answered himself. If you're not an effective parent, you can't be an effective teacher. But I've worked with so many parents who at the beginning, because at the Manad Academy, the parents learn alongside their children. So the Manad Academy, they have the sessions for the boys, and the parents have the sessions for the parents. So they have parent workshops, and we teach them the same theme, but to their actual ages. And I've seen parents who have not been effective and obviously had difficulty with their child, then over a period of time become effective because they're actually picking up and learning the tools that have been taught to them.
It sounds like, Cass, you fulfill what's in the Bible down in the Manhood Academy: once a man and twice a child. So,
definitely,
you know.
definitely. And I think another thing when it comes to effective teaching, one of the main things is that you've got to know your strengths and your weaknesses. If you don't get that right, then it will always be problematic. Nobody can be good at everything. Somebody is going to specialize in a certain area. And then what you do is connect with other teachers and parents to strengthen your other points that you're weak on.
Right. Because Sister Shahid and Professor Shahid, Brother Professor Minister Shahid and Sister Professor and Dr. Shahida. So isn't it important then, you know, for us to really just accept the fact, because you mentioned it, Brother Cass, we've had many children accidentally. Not that they were planned, they were accidents. So having a child accidentally doesn't make you accidentally a parent, right? Or a teacher. So these issues have to be addressed, right?
Right.
So just because we've had an accident, does that make us parents and teachers? Please.
Brother Minister, I was trying to listen to the question properly. So is the question, can you be an effective teacher if you don't have children? I think that's what the the question was. And I think that an educator can use life skills to teach. However, there is a level after you've had children of patience that you have to develop. There's a whole set of skill set that you get just by becoming a parent if you are intentionally parenting, which is real, you know, and that goes to what you were saying, Brother Minister. You have to intentionally want to parent. So even if your child came and it was unexpected, now the child is here. The child is your responsibility now to cultivate and to parent. So just like Brother was saying, you have to develop these skills now. So you can be a teacher and not have children. However, once you've had children, now the demand on you is to become that teacher, is to become that leader and that guide of that child until the child is able to self-educate, basically, because they can do that as well. So yes, but that's why. As
I wanted to jump in. What I wanted to jump in with is that question also leads on to, can you be a teacher without loving children?
Right.
Because there are many people who are teachers and don't really have much regard for children. This is like a job that pays a salary, right?
Right, exactly.
Like taking a shower without water.
Right.
Right, the love and the patience that you have to develop, it's almost as if the child becomes an extension of your family. If you truly want to teach and reach a child, you see that child as a part of your community, as a part of your family. And so you would want to nurture and see the best be drawn out of that child. So yes.
So you don't have to have children in order to love children. So just quickly to Brother David, and then I'm going to go back to yourself, Brother Hakeem. Is not the schools, Brother David, overpopulated with teachers that don't really love children?
Is that question for me?
No, it's for Brother David.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can now.
Yeah. Sorry, can you just repeat the question? I was struggling with it.
Isn't one of the problems that we have in the educational system is that we have a lot of teachers who really don't love children? And can you be an effective teacher if you don't love children?
There's a Ethiopian proverb that says, if you can't hold a child in your arms, please hold them in your heart. And that really encapsulates what you have to do. You have to love children, and loving children is loving humanity. To develop, I think, to develop a child or teach a community holistically, to unlock the genius of all the qualities of the child, it can't be, or homeschooling is not dependent on the parent teacher. You know, as I said, my 34 years, I've come to the conclusion that we need teams of teachers. And when you, again, I go back to the point, when you study Black history, that's what we had. Why was Ghana, so-called medieval Ghana successful? Or Mali, the whole university system of Mali, or Songhai that became, you know, bigger than Europe. Why were they successful? Because they had teams of teachers, they had teams of educators. And so I think homeschooling, and I know a lot of people have been, you know, listening. The one thing I would say to them, if you're going to homeschool, you choose the collective model or the cooperative model. You develop a team of teachers and a community teacher. And being a parent teacher is about facilitating learning, facilitating the unlocking of genius. And therefore, you've got to have many skills. But if you're part of a team, then you are able to organize a team and to unlock that genius. And that's really what leadership is. I think right at the beginning, you mentioned about courage. And that's what, you know, we have to have as a collective. We have to have courage, but that courage has to be informed, and it has to be informed with a lot of research. I'm constantly reading, and when I deliver my teacher trainings, I'm constantly referring people to books to read, to study. So my answer is, you know, you have to love children, you have to love humanity, and you have to love your people.
Very good. Thank you. Brother Hakeem?
Yes, sir. This point or question
was raised by one of our audience members that's in Antigua, and they want to know, what does a real Black liberation curriculum look like? One that's truly effective. What does one actually look like? And especially perhaps from our home education point of view, as well as an established institution, but as a parent teaching from homeschooling, what does a real Black liberation curriculum look like?
A massive question.
Really important.
So again, Sister Shahida, you do this, and Brother David, you do this, and Sister Cozy, you do this, Brother Kinda, you do this. Give us a snapshot of what a true curriculum would look like for us as a people.
A true curriculum to me would unleash the potential of the child and give the child their origin, right? The origin of everything, and give that child the ability to reach their fullest potential, right? So there'll be no limitations on what that child can do, not even in one skill set. So it's a very broad question, but I would say that it would unleash the true potential of that child in so many different facets, but it would also ground that child in a root knowledge of self and a root knowledge of others than self. And that's very key in the very beginning, so that they can understand their full potential.
Fantastic. Sister Kosi? You're on mute, my sister.
I would tend to agree with what the previous speaker has said. However, I would also like to add that I think for the curriculum to be effective, it has to obviously have facts and the truth. You find that there's a lot of information about the origins that came from Africa that are not captured. You know, we're seen as a dark continent, that there was never development, we never invented anything. When you find in history, there's a lot that we actually, for example, look at Egypt and the history and the richness of the history thereof. And the fact that, in fact, Egypt is the origin of civilization. But I find that, you know, the history textbooks are teaching children something else. So there has to be a complete picture and the truth and the facts of historically, you know, where we come from. And however, we need to obviously adapt that to the modern age and be able to align the education that our children are getting to the skills of the future, so that they're able to compete on par and be able to be have that competitive advantage like everybody else, like all the other nations in the world. I also want to add to what you're saying is that we need to obviously have an education system that is able to seek out and a child's unique characteristics and be able to hone on that and be able to let a child develop to their full potential. That's what education is actually supposed to be about. So it has to be fully comprehensive. So it has to be a fact, have knowledge, but also be able to pick up the talents of a child and allow a child to be able to develop to their full potential. Thank you.
Okay, we want to get through as many questions as possible. So just very quickly, Brother David, very quickly, because we hear a lot of talk in regards to curriculum about just knowing what we have achieved in the past, knowing about ancient Africa, knowing about ancient Egypt, and inculcating this information into the children. But is it really teaching or proper teaching just to point out what we have done if we're not able to teach the children how to replicate what we have done in the past? Because I find there's a big gulf between, you know, trying to inform our children of our greatness and actually teaching them, training them, and preparing them to replicate and go beyond.
Yeah, I think there's a gulf when Black history is not taught correctly. If Black history is taught as a development tool and a personal development tool, then it's very, very relevant to their life now. We produce our own books in maths, English, science, and Black history from year 1 to GCSE, and we try and fuse them so that there is a journey. Really, what we're doing is we're trying to take the children on a journey, and so Black history should be taught alongside digital literacy and cultural literacy. So when you teach Black history alongside other subjects and you embed Black history. We don't teach it so much as a discrete subject. Sometimes we do, but when you embed Black history, then suppose you're teaching about science and technology, and you mentioned about the achievements of Black scientists and inventors, then it's embedded, and it's not something other. You're not seen to be boasting or going off at a tangent, you see. So, and what you also, lastly, what you do when you also have embedded Black history is that you inspire the child, and by inspiring the child, you kind of like program the child and program the home for success. And this is what we've got to do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Rabbi Hakeem.
Thank you. I know that there are a couple of you that are on the Zoom today that didn't get a chance to put your question forward last week to the panel. Brother Wayne Shahid, I know you're there. So if you want to put your question forward to the panel this week, then please raise your virtual hand and you'll be able to engage live with the panelists. I know there's a couple more as well. Last week we wasn't able to get to you, so please this week take the opportunity, raise your virtual hand, and we'll get to you. Another question from the chat room is, how can we best support South Africa and other African countries if there is no digital infrastructure?
Very good question. So, Brother, kindly, would you like to start that question off?
Yeah, right. So I think one of the best ways that I've actually found, and I was speaking to my colleagues in Nigeria on Friday, is to first of all connect with them to see how we can best serve them. I think a lot of people go off on a tangent and talk about going back to Africa, doing this and that in Africa, without actually knowing what they need on the ground. So if we make that connection with the key players that are on the ground, the grassroots people that are on the ground, then it's better in that way. Also, what I would suggest that people do their research beforehand, because when it comes to certain places, even the school that I work with, which is in Ipaja in Lagos in Nigeria, they actually want certain certain equipment that will help the child go through schooling. See, somebody's at my door. So probably my time's up. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So let me go straight to South Africa. How can we help you?
Very good question. Sure, I would say we need, first of all, we're battling with infrastructure, not only in our country per se, but you find generally in Africa is the issue of infrastructure. For example, the network infrastructure that we need for example, online learning. So technology is also a challenge that we face. Obviously, we need funding as well, because I find that some of the programs that are available, either locally or internationally, obviously there is a cost involved to it, and you find that the children from disadvantaged backgrounds, for example, in rural schools, in townships, etc., they would like to actually, to do them, because any child can learn anything, anytime, but they don't have the means to be able to afford to pay for them, especially if they're not offered as part of the mainstream
for instance,
national education. Yes.
If I can just cut in a second. For instance, I have an iPad here, like one of the first iPads. I have two iPads that I don't use because they're series 2 and 3, for instance, and they're no longer compatible with what I do here. What would be, that's obviously a start for somebody. Could I send those two iPads somewhere this week that you will receive, that you can have technical people on the ground to recalibrate, reboot, make it applicable to where you are? Like something as practical as that.
Yes, definitely. Actually, an excellent answer. That's very true. Something like that. where, you know, obviously in a tablet, a child is able to do basically everything. And it's just a matter of getting that IT support. So definitely true. That's one good practical example. In fact, that's actually what is needed. For example, you know, computers, devices, data, and also the training, because sometimes you find that even the teachers themselves, because they were from the old school or of the Bantu education, they themselves till to date, you know, disadvantaged areas don't even know how to use computers. I know it sounds shocking in this day and age, but it is a reality that we're experiencing in the continent. So that also, so it's devices, you know, for example, the tablets, computers, it's data, access to data, as well as, and also training, you know, training of the teachers as well. And sorry.
So for instance, then Sister Kosi, if I wanted to say donate £10 a month to some data for somebody, you know, could I, for instance, get that £10? If, like, we have 100 odd persons on the Zoom and probably over 1,000 on Facebook Live. If we wanted to target, say, South Africa for 2 months, you know, what sort of impact? What would we need to do to have a positive impact? Because, you know, we see all of this stuff, you know, send £5 for Red Cross, red this, blue that, brown that, you know, white this. But if as I said, I wouldn't miss spending £10 a week to a teacher or somebody who's influential, who's going to use those funds for data to actually make a difference in a village somewhere. And I'm sure there are countless others on this line who would like to do something like that alongside our personal and other needs. But that's something that we could set up and do immediately through the community question time. So I want you, not necessarily to give me a knee-jerk response, I want you to liaise with Brother Trevor Hakeem for us to work together, because we're back here next week for part 3. So how we can set up a direct debit, set up some kind of payment system to ensure that we can get data and tablets and phones that are discontinued here over to you in South Africa, so that we can actually say that this show that we had today helped 100, you know, 1,000 young people in South Africa. And we're obviously trusting you to ensure that what we send and what we, you know, are desirous of doing reaches its destination, and we'll expect you to police things on the ground. And if things get a little out of hand, and you can put in a call to me, and I'll round up the soldiers and we come into South Africa, okay, for our data.
Thank you so much. I will. Thank you so much. I will try to also be in touch with the Ministry of Education in the country, so that you know they do become aware of such an initiative. I do work on the ground. I work with children from all ages, and my heart is obviously the disadvantaged children, because they're not as privileged as some of our children are. So you know, it's a matter of channeling them through the right schools and communities as such. So I think maybe I would probably have to get in touch with the government so that they are aware of such an initiative, and then see how we best channel that. Obviously, to ensure that there's accountability and there's trust, you know, from you as well, that are, you know, as the donors, that whatever we do, it actually does reach the end user, and there's no abuse in the process. So it's something that we can work on and have all those accountability structures in place. But we will chat offline regarding that. Thank you so much for the initiative. It's very much appreciated. Because in actual fact, that is exactly what the challenge is. It's exactly those practical needs that you mentioned earlier. So yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
I'll just come in there at all.
David and Dr. Shahid and Professor Shahid, well, because you have an amalgamation of books and literature, maybe we can speak offline to see how we can, you know, work together and make a bulk purchase of some of your material, and equally send them to South Africa, you know, so that we can make a difference immediately. Because I like to solve these problems as I go along.
I was going to. Sorry, can I just jump in there? Sorry, I can see the sister wants to speak as well. No, we offer free training actually to teachers, youth workers, etc., on, you know, supporting their children. So we're happy to deliver that, if, you know, but it's obviously via Zoom. So once you've got Zoom facilities, yeah. So we offer teacher training. That's about 2 hours.
That's fantastic. And before we end today, we're gonna need these details, because your details and the details of Dr. Shahid and Shahidas are being heavily desired, because you do this, you've done this, and there are those on the line who actually want to, as of today, start implementing, you know, your models. So please, let's ensure, Sister Sylvina, Brother Hakeem, that the information of Brother David, obviously everybody, but by way of the teacher training courses that you already run, and the books that you've already published, they've been heavily demanded, and we're going to need access to those as of today. Brother Trevor Hakeem.
Sir, thank you.
Did you want to say something, Sister Shahida?
I was just going to say, Brother Minister, this goes back to what we were talking about, the connecting with our continent, with our motherland. My parents actually had the opportunity to live on the continent in Africa for 8 years. And in one of the countries they lived in, Liberia, they actually formed a partnership and have a school that's being built right now in Liberia. So inshallah, Shahid and I are going to get the opportunity to go and do some teacher training there. But it goes back to us being able to send educators there, bring children, you know, so that they can see with little how much people are doing. So this is a very this is very key and very important. Like you were saying, making that connection with our motherland.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brother Hakeem.
Brother Wayne Shahid, you can now unmute yourself. You can engage with the panelists.
Okay, can I hope everyone can hear me. I've unmuted. Okay. Well, firstly, well, thank you for Brother Hakeem for bringing together this this monumental event.
There's two of them.
And hello.
There's two, sorry? Hakeem. Which one? You're talking about both?
Well, Brother Trevor Hakeem, I know he's working on bringing together these CQT events, and obviously, Brother Minister.
So I don't what?
He is both Hakeem. So, and when you mention one Hakeem, you mention the other. It's okay.
Okay. Well, again, thank you to for the panel for their insight and information. I'll be brief really with the question. This question may need to be answered next in part 3. I'm not sure. I know we've been talking about a universal curriculum for children, but I believe they may well need to work in tandem, and might even be part a step before that, a universal curriculum for parents. I know we've kind of touched on that during the conversation and during the discourse, but what does the panel feel should be a strategy put in place that runs in tandem with the universal curriculum for children, the universal curriculum for parents? Because again, if you know, they say take a village to raise a child, but if the village are not educated themselves, and the children will never be educated. So what is a strategy that needs to be put in place, the infrastructure that needs to be put in place, that then the children enter into an environment of education where the mindset of the parents are in the right place, and they've been given all the tools in terms of financial literacy. Okay, it don't make sense we give them the tablets and they're just on Twitter.
And what also doesn't make sense, Brother Shahid, is for you to ask such a loaded question 5 minutes before we end.
Well, brother,
okay. Let me say this. We've got 5 minutes left and your question is 5 minutes just to ask. So therefore, we definitely are going to have to, you know, pick up your question and the first one we cover next week, because that is much too loaded. You know, it's like during bedtime. You know, you don't start reading encyclopedias at bedtime. Okay, it's wind down type of books at night. So we'll pick up that question.
Thank you, Brother Wayne Shahid.
Yeah, we promise you. You will have the first question next week when we open up for questions. Okay.
Yes, sir. Inshallah.
And if any of you just wanted to give a snapshot response you know, before we start next week, then fine. I'm open to that.
Can I say something?
Sure, please, Brother David.
The curriculum needs to be a dual curriculum. So it's not just for the child, it's for the parents. So you have what family learning. So the curriculum that we wanted, and I think you said that Minister Louis Farrakhan is requesting, it has to be a family-based, a community-based curriculum. Otherwise, we fall into the trap of imitating the Western curriculum, you know, and the industrial model. As Sister said earlier, that puts you in little boxes and teaches you at the same time and teaches subjects singularly, etc. So a dual curriculum is what I think is needed.
Fantastic. And as I said, we'll unpack it. Oh, Brother Professor Shahid.
Yeah, just real quick, dovetailing off of what Brother David said. See, the Minister Farrakhan asked us to establish a ministry of education, which covers all aspects of education. It's not just children, it's adults, it's elders, everything. We have to continue, as Prophet Muhammad says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. So if we 80 years old, we still need to be educated. We still need to be seeking knowledge. So there has to be a holistic curriculum where we deal with all aspects of education. And then that way we'll be dealing with every facet of our nation.
Fantastic. So what we must develop then is ministries of educations in every country where we are that speak to each other. And that becomes, you know, the organs, if you will, that must be connected. An education or a ministry of education. So thank you both for that. And last question, Brother Hakeem.
Yes, sir.
And as just for the record, we are different sides of the same coin. Okay, so go ahead, Brother Hakeem.
Okay, Sister Bianca, you can now unmute yourself. You've got about 60 seconds to put forward your question. Go ahead.
Hi, greetings. It's a question for the next one, actually, for next week or whenever you have this again. It was just about how we can kind of set ourselves up to go over to maybe the Caribbean or to Africa for a period of time with our children, and how we would kind of integrate towards, well, their learning over there really whilst they're over there, and how it would help them if we're doing this home educating journey, and just how children over here will have an impact whilst we're over there. Being over here, we're not quite sure what systems are in place over there. We know that, yes, there is the sun and there is the sense of community, which the children kind of lack in the USA and the UK, but just to go into depth of, if we're really going to make this work and actually bring our children over there, what's the structure and how this is going to kind of play out. But yeah, we can leave this for another time.
Fantastic. And what we must do, Brother Hakeem, is, I'm going to come to you, Brother Cass. What we must do for next week is have somebody from the Caribbean online, some of our educators from the Caribbean online next week. Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
Brother Cass.
Cool. Yeah, let me answer that real quickly. Two things. Number one thing people need to understand about getting an African child getting taught in Africa. There are a lot of them, especially the ones that go to, well, let me just speak for Nigeria. A lot of them, especially the ones that go to the more affluent schools, are getting taught the very old English style system. So they're not getting taught about the Garveys and, you know, the Kwame Nkrumahs and stuff. So that's what's happening in Nigeria. So
they're being taught Latin, are they?
Well, maybe. So they're not getting. So when we're talking about taking them back to Africa to get taught in those schools, we have to be mindful, knowing that many of those schools, especially in Nigeria, really do respect the way, you know, children are getting taught over here. So if we're going to get into a situation where we are going to go over there, what we need to do is work with them on a holistic curriculum to do with our children. And also another point is the first road to that, because the sister said, how can we start that? It's just to take them back for a holiday. Take them back for a holiday. That's an education in itself. So if we start with that as a starting point to say, can we actually move over? Can we actually live there? Then that will be the best way forward. Because my children have been going there now for 10 years, and they've also been to the Caribbean.
And let me jump in there, Cass. And one of the things I think Brother David mentioned earlier about, us not overly romanticizing being educated in Africa and the Caribbean. One of the things we have to appreciate is, particularly in Nigeria, Brother Cass, and I think you can attest to this, that even poor people, the poorest of the people, strive to keep their children out of state schools in Nigeria. So even the poorest of the people pay for their children to go to a private school. Now, when I say private, I mean like, the major private schools here. I mean an institution that they have some level of influence over, as opposed to the school that teaches national curricula.
Mm-hmm.
In Nigeria, people run a mile from state education. Okay.
Yeah.
So if state education is something to avoid in parts of Africa, then you have to appreciate, you have to be very targeted when you say you want to send your child to a part of Africa or a part of the Caribbean to be educated, because you have to grow into an understanding of what education is. It's not about the place, it's about the substance of what your child will be receiving. So you have to be substance based as opposed to, just trying to keep up with the sentiment of the moment without having an in-depth, real, qualitative, appreciation for what the objective is. And the objective is to produce a giant who will make a difference on this planet. So wherever the best information is, we should be found pursuing the very best of knowledge, the very best of wisdom, so that we can grow into the highest levels of understanding.
Definitely. And I just wanted to finish.
Yeah,
sorry.
real quick. Yes,
real quickly. And definitely agree 110%. And that's why I said people need to take their children there first to understand the actual structure, because I think they'll be very surprised about what they're actually getting. There's a lot of resistance to certain things like Garveyism and Kwame Nkrumah and the Black Power. There's a lot of resistance over there about that. So we've got to understand: do we want them to know about the land, or do we actually want our children to go to the schools which are not conducive to our children and our children learning about themselves, knowledge, willing, and understanding? So it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, and so without any furthering, thank you for that point, Brother Cass, and to all of the panelists today. I want to thank you. Before we go to closing remarks from Brother Hakeem, I want us to first thank all of the panel members and the panelists for such great insight that they shared with us this Sunday snowy afternoon. So, Brother Trevor Hakeem, can you please make the announcements and let our audience know where they can get further information about all of those who are on the panel?
First of all, for our audience members that still want to put forward questions, can I please advise you that, God willing, when we do this next week, when we make the announcement that you can engage with the panelists, please don't wait till the last 5 minutes. As soon as we make the announcement, please start putting up your virtual hand, because we really want to engage with you. The panelists really want to engage with you. So please put up your virtual hand as soon as you make the announcement. Don't wait till the last 5 minutes. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get to you. If you need any further information, regarding the panelists and their services, because all of them have products and services that they can offer you, please use the email mail@noi.org.uk. The contact details are in the promotional materials that you would have received to be able to come online today. So just look at those promotional materials. There's a contact number on there. There's an email on there. Please use that, and we'll be able to send out all the information regarding the services that our panelists offer. I would also like to just go through some very quick thank yous. So thank you to Global African Congress UK for your support. Thank you for Galaxy Radio. Thank you to Black History Studies. Thank you to the Black Child Agenda. Thank you to Flames Radio. Thank you to Black Eyes TV. Thank you to Family Matters UK. And thank you to the Black British Parent. Please give all these organizations a round of applause. And please support them, because they support us in supporting you. So please support them. And we need to do that. We need to support our services a lot more.
Absolutely. And before we conclude, Sister Sylvina, if you could push up some of the adverts so that we can get some visuals going before we conclude proceedings this afternoon. First and foremost, we also want to add to the thanks and the appreciation, and just be aware that our Professor, Dr. Shahid, will be having a workshop for those of you who are desirous of being inculcated in an approach of how to teach maths to your children, because without the methodology, we won't be successful in inculcating that which will bring forth advancement and benefit. So therefore, there's a very minor cost of $100 US, makes about 75 UK pounds. You can work out the currency wherever you are. This is to take place on the 6th of February at 1 p.m. Is that local time, Brother Professor? Chicago time?
Yes, Central.
I believe that would take place at 7 p.m. UK time. It's a great time for you and your children to sit in front of the computer and engage in this process. We also want to recognize our most recent established political party, Taking the Initiative Party, who will be unleashing opportunities for us to become councillors in the borough of Croydon within the next couple of months, so that we can control the educational budget in one of these councils, and ultimately be able to direct resources towards things like homeschooling. So they have a Zoom meeting this week, Wednesday, that it would be important. Put that up back for me, Sister Sylvina. So it would be important for you to try and jump onto that meeting, and they will be discussing well-being and how to cook healthy during the lockdown, okay? And that will take place at 8 p.m. this Wednesday, and the details will be put up into the chat for you to download also. And additionally, on Thursday, we're going to be having a discussion, part 4 of owning property here in the United Kingdom and globally. We have a weekly Exodus property discussion, and we had a wonderful time with Brother Charles Gordon on Thursday, and we had Brother Professor Abdul Halim, who is a town planner, the week before. And this week we're going to wrap it all up and show you how to add value to property before you even purchase, how to structure your mind to buy property that you can add value to, and also whether these prevailing circumstances, that the prevailing circumstances is ripe for, exiting Europe and the West, getting into what we were discussing earlier. But we will be discussing the ownership and the purchasing of property. So just your last video that you were going to show, Sister Sylvina, and we'll be concluded As I said, on Thursday, the tickets will be available immediately from Eventbrite for those of you who want to book your place on Thursday. The event on Thursday will not be going out on Facebook Live. So it's important that you do actually buy a ticket and come and join us. We're going to have one of our estate agents also come on and show us live properties that you can actually purchase that's available now, and show you how to add value. And if you're desirous, they'll introduce you to solicitors and whatnot in order to follow through on purchasing investment property. So with that said, thank you very much. And all what's left for me to do is ask you once again to give our panelists and give each other another big, well-deserved round of applause. And I look forward with my co-host, Brother Trevor Hakeem, to seeing you again and being with you next week, Sunday at the same time, the same place. So thank you for your energy. Thank you for your beautiful faces. And thank you for your beautiful voices. And thank you for spending a part of your Sunday with us at the Community Question Time. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you. Greatest opportunities.
Thank you so much.
Made manifest when the
Thank you
world
so much.
Some of the places where you live, you may be able to move out of those and sell them and reinvest that money in the Caribbean and in Africa. Thank you, family. Have a happy Sunday and a blessed week henceforth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Kosi, for joining us from South Africa. Dr. Shahid, Professor Shahid, thank you both. And thank you, Brother David. And thank you, Brother Cass. Thank you so much. And thank you all for making this a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful start to this forthcoming week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes, people. Another powerful build there by the NOI. Bringing the people together for chats. I think they're finished. Just winding down. Is there more? Is there more, Rick?
I think we've come to an end. As we were saying before, if you want to come onto the panel and you want to have that discussion, please do so. You know, we want to have that dialogue on the aspects. But in what you've received today, what kind of points would you pick up?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest point that was made today, I think parents, everyone needs to consider who's doing it, is you're not just homeschooling your child, you've got to school yourself in the very subject matters that you're going to be talking to your child about. And you got to have an honest assessment of, you know, your skill set, your interests, what you want your child to be interested in, their own natural interests. All of these things have to be considered, but the truth of it is you're schooling yourself as much as you're going to be schooling a child.
Just a 1 minute. I picked up on something, right? And when it comes to homeschooling and understanding homeschooling, because one thing that we kind of got to understand, regardless of putting your child in a school or doing homeschooling, there's kind of a curriculum, and whether you take your child to the Caribbean or Africa, there is certain parts of understanding that will not be taught within the schools or wherever you go, because it's still working sometimes over the, as we call it, the European curriculum in its factors. So when they mention about, like, things like Marcus Garvey and a lot of Black history, which is not provided even when you go to places in Africa, it's not going to be provided in forms of the American or the European or even African history itself. It's not applied in the schools. It makes sense in the form of homeschooling that it helps you to put yourself into that situation. Did you grasp that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, at the best of times, even with the best of educations, you as the parent always have to reinforce and, reaffirm stuff that the child is learning at school or wherever they learn. You understand? That's a standard issue thing that you should be doing anyway. I don't care if your child goes to the normal primary school, secondary school, college, or whatever. Your job as the parent is to go over what they're learning, whatever it is, and as I said, reaffirm to that child what it is they've gone through. So, especially in aspects like you said of cultural significance, history, Black presence across all genres, as Brother Hakeem was talking about, because obviously Black history is world history. So you filling in those gaps properly is definitely a job you can only do at home in a more comprehensive way, especially if your child's in normal school services. But as I said, that's a standard issue thing. I gotta say that point once and tell. I gotta make that point that it has to be standard that whatever your child is learning, you as a parent have to reinforce that at home. Go to, bro.
Yeah, no, because I just wanted to add on to that, in the fact that, do you find that in nowadays we now offer our children to the people without even engaging with the school? In fact, in thinking that the school will do a good job without our input, where in the past, or like in forms of the times of when we were in villages or we was in certain circumferences where we, not just the child go to the school, but would learn through their grandparents and their parents in forms of home. They applied their own personal homeschooling. Do you feel that aspect has been missing?
I mean,
in schooling.
In modern day terms, obviously more people's got bigger bills, working longer hours. Both parents are usually working if there are two parents to begin with. So those factors are the key factors most of the time as to why parents are pushed in their interactions with their children. Obviously, their expectations of what you have of the place where your child is going, you're supposed to have certain expectations. You're supposed to expect teachers in a teaching institute to teach your children in a certain level and to a certain point. But again, as any proper active parent, no matter what your child's learning, you have to micromanage that situation. You should be touching base, because again, if you're not talking to the school, then you can't really reinforce what's going on at home, innit? From homework, simple things like just reinforcing, have you done your homework, to what are you actually learning in the homework or in your lessons, etc., etc. So, but the biggest enemy to that is time and money most of the time. And, and that's why, again, in this pandemic time where a lot of people are laid off or having to stay at home, that's why we're kind of saying, is this the time to kind of take advantage of that And while you have that extra time, obviously probe deeper, do some more research, and see what you can actually provide for your child before everything turns back up eventually, and situations change again where it may not be applicable now for you to be able to spend as much time as you could do now.
Yeah, because when I look at, as I said to you, like as I look at things in the forms of our responsibility of our children, and this is what I was mostly alluding to, the fact of Black family first, in the fact that being a family and being a Black family of old was a system or a kind of a personal family curriculum, in the fact of getting to sit down together, playing board games together, doing things together, doing the chores together, where you get the education of life. And I feel that we've removed that, in which we've become very complicated people, in the fact that we concentrate more on the direction of that we need to make that money or that asset, than to concentrate on the family aspect of that. Once we have children, it's no more our lives, but as a group or as a family, and where we're becoming individuals and creating that segregation within that family, which makes us not able to pay more attention to the children. Because you will find that a lot of parents will once their child gets to secondary school and they get into their first and second year, they feel that they don't need to be educated or left alone. Continue. I'm just gonna pick up this.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, again, the brothers was talking about the importance of travel being a great teaching tool. So again, obviously we all have monetary issues and these kinds of things, definitely. But understanding the importance of going away or having your kids travel, just as understanding it as a learning tool, is a big thing. And obviously it's a family pursuit with enjoyment and fun and for everybody. But again, the importance of that can't be undervalued. So when we're talking again in regards to the homeschooling and how to format that, it's not always going to be, as they also talked about, necessarily you just sitting down and simply doing computer or reading from a book. It will involve you actively getting involved and doing certain things as far as activities and going to different places to expand your knowledge and your viewpoint on your surroundings. And obviously then as a parent, you need to pinpoint from those surroundings, from those trips, the key points that again you want your child to know about. And obviously when it comes to those kinds of situations, it's a much more free-flowing, less rigid experience, in the sense that whether you've got multiple children of different ages, again, there's something for them all to take from those kinds of experiences. And there's always a teaching moment. All 5 of our children are teachers in the public system, so to help people. 3 that were not homeschooled have non-teaching jobs. Okay, I'm just reading Reacher. Thanks for your comments from St. Louis, I'm gonna assume. And she's just talking about all 5 of her children teachers that went through the homeschooling system, if I'm not mistaken. So again, it worked out for her, and she's saying she homeschooled from the 80s. So you're old school, you're dab hand at this thing, then you're a veteran. Because again, I think this homeschooling thing has obviously come up a lot more based on the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But the conversation about the lack of decent curriculum for us as a people has been a long-standing conversation going back to the beginning, so definitely it's something that needs considering. But again, I like today because it did draw more focus, not just on the children, but on what the parent needs to be prepared to do to make the process work. And again, you know, even if you're observing schools in general, no good teacher job hours are from 9 to 5. You know, there's always extra and above, there's always extra research, there's always extra tasks to be done if you really want those students to achieve. So again, if we're talking about your child, then think about the levels in which you need to really push yourself in order to make sure that your child gets the best possible education, and again isn't left in a loop where they're not really learning nothing. You understand? It's not really benefiting them, and they're losing out, worse still, on parts of the education, basic education now, reading, writing, comprehension. Yeah, that again, you're putting them behind in life. Because as I always tell my son, you know, if you have a good understanding, comprehension, reading, maths, you can go on to learn anything. But if those skills, you know, just as far as basic learning tools, aren't down packed, nailed to the wall in every which way, then you'll always be lacking. Yeah, you'll always be playing catch up. So yeah, I definitely think that's a thing to talk
Yeah.
about.
So going into understanding, and you know, as I know, Brother Kende, who goes back to Nigeria, and we've established some form of manhood academy in Nigeria, and understanding how, like for me, I've schooled in Nigeria myself, in the fact of understanding how the curriculum works with the school academia. They have a high IQ level in forms of education. But one thing you understand about even in the education over there, even though it's under the facts of European curriculum, you will find that they will get like extra tutors for their children to make their children to go into that further extreme in the fact of learning more and studying a bit more over the period. And if a child has a situation, they have a kind of like a system, like kind of like homeschooling, which they will go through in the summer, because their academia wasn't great. Because one thing with the secondary schools back home is if you fail that year, you're going to repeat that year. So if you're going to repeat that year, you have to go back into revision throughout your whole summer, just because you failed that period of year. And that's where you will find some children are older in their class because they're not striving or able to maneuver within that class academia. So then it makes them butt their ideas in forms of exams and situations. So when I say that, is that the one thing that I noticed back home is that grandmother always used to, every summer, grandmother will always sit us down and give us that cultural education.
Right.
In the fact of talking about the family, talking about doing certain chores with grandma. You know, like my grandmother, even though she had wealth, she would still go and fetch water. So we'll accompany her to go and fetch the water. But that journey of us fetching the water, she gets to able to teach us. You know, she taught me about African traditions. She taught me about religious traditions and how the village was and how grandpa was, and you know, before she passed away. So I got a fully loaded part of my education from my grandparents, more than my actual parents, because my two parents were really busy and they didn't really have as much time. But what I've noticed in this country is what my parents were back then, in forms of them trying to get that, as they would say, the guap or the money. And it's not their fault, because they're trying to get bills paid. But then there is a neglection in the fact that sometimes, as an only child, what I found is that every time I needed that attention, I needed that little bit of education, or even just the weight, because my mum, you know, was one person that did teach me a lot, and she would put me onto the books, but she couldn't find all the time, to find that time to just actually sit with me within, like, even on a weekend, to say, you know what, this is what we're gonna do and this is what we're gonna have. That bit of love that we always say that we miss, but we never seem to gain that education because of what the system puts upon them in the fact of creating and paying off their bills in that situation.
No, definitely. The grandparents one is a major thing. Because again, when I was coming up, I'm from Hackney originally. And for those who are from Hackney might know of the Africa Centre that was in Dalston. And my gran actually ran it for a little while. So again, a lot of my sidebar education, because I used to have to go there Saturday school type thing, was done by my nan herself and by other elders in the community, as Terry was saying, on cultural practices, speaking Yoruba, all sorts of classes, and funny enough, my nan even worked in my primary school for a hot minute. So that was an experience when when you get in trouble and the headmaster's telling you go to your nan's class to get told off instead of anywhere else. So I had that experience of having the older generation. And now when I'm schooling my 13-year-old, I include my mum as much as possible in the homeschooling, as far as she has an update weekly of what he's doing, and therefore she can check on his work online, obviously, and she gets results of certain of his classes that he does, because again, that extra support is needed. You know what I'm saying? Definitely, because money still have to make, as Terry said, and bills have to pay. So we totally get that, and that's why a wider support network is definitely needed, whether it be family or the organizations that you've seen today or we've talked about in the past.
Because that family, when you actually understand, is we're not talking on the facts of family as in blood, but as family as a village. Everybody has a form of creativity. Everyone has a form of skill. And if we are working together in that perspective, we are able to apply each other's skills to giving that life education, because we've all been through things, whether it's positive or negative. But when we put it as a collective, it gives the child a much wider reach in understanding and able to move forward in that perspective. And that's why, as I said, when it comes to that family, is that why grandmother every Sunday would always want that family to come together, in the fact that it's not only even the children can teach the children in their coming to as a collective. There's older children that have been through what the younger children have been through, and they can apply what they have learned in their past to the children beneath them. But then, and if you look at it as they were talking earlier on, it takes a village to raise a child. That family is that village, and that is the system. No matter how we see this system, what the system in the European world is, what it has done is take that system out of the family and put it as in a system that pulls you away from that family, where you're working as an individual.
No, listen, again, totally hear you. For those that don't know, again, that's listening, if you want to jump in, the link is there in the chat. Stick that last comment on the screen. Like, come in, voice your opinion. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you think the homeschooling thing is something that really can work. Do you think it's something that can work on a mass scale, or do you not see it as a viable thing? Are you happy with the current school system? And in a whole, and you're happy to kind of patch up the gaps. What do you think? Like to hear your comments. Please come drop it in. But again, today, as I said, is about self-observation as a parent, because homeschooling means you're taking a lot of responsibility now, extra responsibility than you normally would. So understanding what that is a big thing. But as Terry was just talking about, the more we hold fast to these traditions of teaching amongst our family structure as elders down to the youngers, it becomes a more natural process. It becomes a more second nature process then to pass on this generational knowledge. And again, you know, as Terry was saying also, everybody has skills and skill sets, but never underestimate the power of someone else's way of getting a point across. Because again, there's a thousand things parents you may talk to your children about in multiple different ways. And, you know, all it takes is for someone who may be not in your immediate circle, who comes under this branch of a wider village that's helping to raise, or another experienced person who's got their own ways of dealing with things, and maybe the way they come across to your child is the perfect way for them to suddenly click, and they get the point. They get something you was going over and over and beating your head over.
But there's a question that I just noticed in the fact of I know this lady. She says homeschooling isn't necessary feasible for working parents, for the single parent, and I understand that in the fact of the single parent, and this is why it's more than ever in that we are working as one family, because there is a friend, there is an auntie, there is someone, if we are working together, that we can say, you know what, we can rely on. But the problem is that when we're not unifying, or we're not even coming together as a family, we fall into these situations. And of course, it's very difficult as a single working mother, because if she has no one to apply to, then it makes us as a community to able to apply or help the situation in forms of galvanizing. And this is why we're more into the Manhood Academy, in the fact that we bring our children together, even if the parents can have to go to work, but we can take charge as part of the community, as a family, into helping our functional our people out there, in the fact that they have certain issues or situations that can able to be dissolved. Because, you know, by learning from another child, it gives me great honor into able to understand children much more. So when we're talking the Manhood Academy and Womanhood Academy, we're looking at the forms of rites of passage, and that rites of passage is what was applied in the village, because not all families can maintain or even help in a situation where there is no help at all. So when we're talking about the community, we have to understand that we are one for one and all for all, in the fact that if you are one person is weak, we are all weak, as in the weakest link in the chain. So we have to be strong in a form of that community family, into creating that help as much as possible. But we can only do that is when we engage all together.
Facts. And again, you know, as we already covered, and as the sister's saying, we totally understand. I'm a single parent, so when it comes to bills and all sorts, there's no denying the importance of these things, and that time and all the rest of it is definitely hard. But also,
we've got another question that's come through again.
Hold on. In saying that, I gotta say this: we got to start to weigh up how important is the future education of our children. That has to be a serious consideration, as serious as I need money, I have to pay the bills, and you know, all the rest of it. And that's whether or not you, as I said earlier, your child is still in normal education. You still will have to still ask yourself that question, and still select a certain amount of time to, as we said, bolster what they're learning on a basic level, as well as give them the extra cultural pointers that they're definitely going to need.
And that's where, as I'll just add to that quickly, is the fact that this is the reasons why, as a community, we need a think tank to able to tackle many of these situations. Because if we're not working as a collective and we're working as an individual, it will never work. You will have to end up relying on that system. So in going into that question of educationalists in the diaspora should lead on the educational and circularism forms, because the diaspora is not, I can't even read it properly, my eyes are going a bit blurry.
Sorry, curriculum reforms, because the diaspora is not aligned to any of the political parties in Africa. Again, this is where, if one of the things, if you are someone who claims to be Pan-African, or it's an important part of you trying to show your children, again, I think, one, you have to show them the history of Africa. This is where the history and the build-up to modern-day politics, that has to be clarified. So again, moving forward for your child, you know, and this is depending on their age group and whatever, and their level of understanding, but moving forward, they will have a clearer idea of what they're looking at when they do look at Africa and they look at news reports. They'll have a clear idea of why these current political parties, and even in England and wherever else they live across the diaspora, look the way they look and behave the way they behave. So that's where you can kind of clean that up, because, you know, we kind of touched on it. You heard the Nation of Islam talk about Brother Dean, who's involved in this new political party. Now, me, myself, I don't personally believe in current politics in its format. Again, when you understand the history that's gone into that, you know, what you're seeing, then you can start to have a more balanced view of understanding, okay, am I looking at more of the same, or am I looking at a proposed difference to what we've been living for the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? But again, you can only make those comparisons if you do the historical research into why these parties are the way they are and the things that have gone on in the place.
And you know, to add to that, you know, because one thing that I've really noticed, and I get it in forms of the political leadership, is the fact that we're always focusing on the outside. And I'll put an analogy on this, in the fact that we always know, right? If we was doing 100 meters running back in the days, we always knew that Usain Bolt was always going to win that race when he was at his top form. And I knew that no matter how much I trained or what I did, I would never catch him up. Why am I going to observe him when I need to observe myself, into making sure that I'm always at the top peak of my abilities, in the forms of a family, concentrating that, making sure my family has a good education in its factors, that eventually one day Usain Bolt is going to either retire or he's going to slow down. And then if I'm still on top of my game, the possibilities, I might even pass him, or I'm satisfied even in second place. Because even just winning all the time doesn't mean anything in life. We're all here for a particular reason. And the real factor is that we need to apply the information to our children to creating that legacy. It might not be in our time, but we give our children hope by creating what we need to create as that family in that educational system of ours, not theirs, and allow them political leaders to do what they need to do, you know, and apply what we need to do as our family. One day that political leader may go and our children's children might be that new political leader. where there will be change. But
Look,
if we don't see no foundation, where are we going?
That's it. Can't work backwards on this thing. The education first is what's going to lead to better leaders, better political parties, better world observers, better world movers and shakers, because they're educated better, because they've always known what a colonial pathway looks like. They've always known what a true family structure looks like. They've always been nurtured and loved. These are the key aspects to you creating, as they always say in the cliche terms, a better tomorrow. These are the true facets. There's no shortcut to it. There's no economic pathway that's going to solve it overnight. These things you cannot cheat. You understand? That's why for certain positions in the world, people are groomed from the moment of birth, because they understand this, that there's certain roles, there's certain key elements in society that need to be done with such a high level that they don't leave this thing to chance. The education of that person, of that lineage, has to start from the moment, if not before birth, of that person. We need to start thinking like that. If we're really about this pro-Black life, or this pro-Black utopia that some of us talk about, then this is one of the surefire ways to make it happen. If you're about the economics and political systems changing, this is the only way for it to change. If you're talking about bridging the gap between our brothers and sisters in Africa to us in the diaspora and feeling like we're all as one, again, it's education that's going to do that. It's the understanding. And remember what we talked about. Education isn't just books and computer programs and lessons. It's also traveling. It's your interactions around the globe with your brothers and sisters, with the various cultures that come under the African Black paradigm. These are all ways to educate yourself and your children, because it's a joint venture. You understand? As you're doing it, one educates the other, and so on and so forth. And again, as Terry talked about, this is a generational plan if done correctly. And over time, it gets easier. That's the kicker. Gets easier. The more you do it, as we said, the more second nature it becomes.
And you know, and that is where, as I said, is that we need to concentrate on us. It's not about others. They can do what they want. They could be 500 years ahead of us, 600 years ahead of us. But do we actually really care? No. Because it's about us making our moves, doing what we need to do for our people. This is our unification of our family. I don't, you know, in the factor of that we're scattered across the world. The African diaspora is massive. The African people on land is massive. If we're unifying into one piece, it doesn't take all of us to do it. It takes 20 people, 10 people. And if the 10 people become successful, the others will follow. It's taking that step as a collective, not as an individual. So, you know, it's understanding that we need to able to educate our children in the fact that if we are coming as a family and we come to as a collective, we need to invest in forms of rites of passages. We need to invest in things like Saturday schooling. We need to invest in forms of our own teachers and working as a collective. Because if I'm in a good position and I can invest in paying a tutor for my child, why don't I just get another child to come on with me? Do you understand? As a family. Because when we work together in that way, we start to unify ourselves. And it works organically. in the fact that we have we work in that fact of our parents and our uncles and our aunties, our friends, and because one thing that I've noticed, right, is that we always come together as a collective, right? When it comes to parties, when it comes to weddings, when it comes to funerals, we're ready to eat it down and work together and laugh and joke and go home. Why can't we do that for the education of our children? What do you think about that, Richie?
It's real talk at the end of the day, but self-discipline is never, it's the hardest one. Self-reflection is the hardest one, isn't it? And that's the key element. That's where, again, being a teacher and a parent is not a simple task, because you have to self-reflect, be self-disciplined. These are all things that don't come simple, and you have to be, as much as, again, you can do the group motivation thing, for these things to really manifest on an individual house-to-house basis, you have to find your true motivation. And that's where the uncomfortable question, even though it might seem like a dumb question, is how much do you love your kids? That's the truth of it, isn't it? How much do you love your kids? How much do you love your family? How much do you love black people?
The funniest thing is, Manhood Academy does not ask for nothing. I work voluntarily, yeah, and it's free to come on most of their stuff, but people still don't want to come out.
Again, this is where we got just the importance of it, and
and this is people trying to put in the work, and you'll find that with many organizations. So even in the factor of, do you believe to invest in your child? If you want to invest in your child, you would do anything. So even if you're a hardworking person, wouldn't you like to invest in your child? Because you never know what genius you can open within that child. Because you would invest in buying a brand new car. You invest in buying a house. But would you invest in your child?
And I think parents automatically do. This is just about smart investments. This is about maneuvering things around to try to plug gaps at the very least, should I say. If you are in that position where you really don't have the hours, it is you one. Again, it's just finding those times when you can just plug the gaps and reinforce. And regardless of however busy you think you are, if part of your busy schedule isn't overseeing whatever your child's education is, whether they're in normal public school, to be in homeschool, to go into a private school, to go into a tutor, you as the parent are always responsible for overseeing and micromanaging that process. Don't ever assume that you're not. Don't ever assume that any amount of money exempts you from that, because it doesn't. It really doesn't. Yeah. So again, that should be, in fact, if no one else is going to come, we should kind of really just bow out on that one. That regardless of your position moving forward, you as black parents, if you love black people and you're about the black family, which we are here at Black Eyes TV about, then you will have to find a way to oversee, reaffirm, reinform, reconstruct, and redefine what your children are learning every day.
And simple as that. As we're coming to close to an end, we've got a few. If you have a few more questions or you want to quickly come on the panel, please do so. We sent the link in there. We will answer all your questions as much as possible. And as I said, all this even alludes to even on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. We've got True Talk in the fact that we're talking about the whole banking system and the situation about banking system and reparations bank in the fact of creating that bank. And it's not as in just putting money in, it's the fact of having a body that can able to control or able to sort out situations of reparations. But the reason why I'm talking about Tuesday's show, which will be 3 p.m. Eastern time, is the fact of financial literacy, as we said earlier on today, in that we need to educate our children financial literacy, because you can work as much as you like. You can have 10 houses as much as you like. You can have a business. But if your child does not have does not understand financial literacy, all that will go out of the window. Before you know it, all that sheer hard work and you paying all them bills will be thrown out. And this is where even in the facts of understanding our children's creativity, because some academia, some schools are not meant for some of our children. They're just practicals, or they're more visuals. In the fact that if they have something and you apply to that situation, and it's not just about, oh well, he can play football or he can be a music artist, but the factor of can he manage himself in the forms of managerial skills of being a music artist and managerial skills as being a footballer. How many black people own clubs? How many black people are black managers? Why don't we tap into these situations than just giving the easy way out? But I understand some children, they just being a worker is fine. There's some people going to be entrepreneurs. That's fine. But working as a collective, you have black players, black manager, black owner. That's teamwork. So if anyone wants, what's the question again? There was one more question before we head out.
No. We covered all the questions.
Okay, so look out for Tuesday night. Tuesday night at 9 p.m. and then look at Friday. Talking with the creatives on the other channel. If you're a music artist and you have something that you want to promote or produce, or you want us to help you to do or create adverts for your products or your services, please email us at BLACKICETV7.com, which I will put up. So if you have any forms of information, or you want to advertise, or you want to promote, or you want to have a panel, or you want to even have a slice sector, and we'll make a timetable for you on a weekly basis or a monthly basis in promoting or pushing your narrative, we are open to everything. Yeah. So please go to the other side, which is the Black Eyes TV. BLACKICETV7 ×2. I will put the link in the chat. Subscribe to that, because that's where the Friday show will be every Friday, and we'll be having the Sister Circle coming back very, very soon. We're going to be having top scholars coming into the house, for the ladies, and and we're going to be discussing a lot more as we're looking in the prospects. If everything works well in forms of flying, we're going to be having the opportunity to go into Congo. We're going to be having opportunities to go to Haiti and many other places. And in the summer, as I always do my voluntary work, me and Brother Kende will be going to Nigeria, and I'll be documenting that for the family so that they can actually see the kind of work that we're doing on ground, because this is not just a TV station, but it's a TV station actually doing the work and covering every aspect of our historical events, because history is not just about the past 100 years ago, but history is the past of yesterday. You know, so if you want to get involved, and please email us. You can contact us on blackicetv.com, and we have what we call the Black Family First. If you want to fund or help us in any form of situation, you know, just go to Cash App Black Family First, or you can go to our GoFundMe, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, which is Black Family GoFundMe.com/F/Black Family First, and that donates because we are creating a international rites of passage for our children to able to network amongst themselves from America, from the Caribbean, from South America to Africa and Europe. So when we're doing kind of like an exchange program, in the fact that they can go to Africa, and as we're working with the Queen of Congo and many others like Professor James Smalls and many other of our scholars like Professor Bino, where our children could go to these places and their children could come to places like here. So we have that exchange program so that they can get to understand that their parameters are much bigger than their area codes. So in saying that, so please go to the other channel and subscribe to it. And I'll be talking, as I said, talking with the creatives. We're going to have many creatives from every community that we can find globally, not just in one place, but globally. Whether they're creatives in Africa, whether they're creatives in America, whether they're creatives in the Caribbean, whether they're creatives in London, Birmingham, Manchester. It doesn't matter where the creative is that we can show our foundation. And if we work that foundation together as a collective, we can become a body. And that's what I call Black Family First. So don't forget, that will be at 8 p.m. GMT time, 3 p.m. EST time. So don't miss that. And we'll be there. Brother Rich, is there anything else?
No, we've covered the bases. Big up to everybody that's been involved in the conversation today. Big up to everyone who's been commenting and adding to the conversation. Next time, hopefully people can jump on. I'd really like to hear from some of you people. Big up to our continuing following and everybody who has supported the channel from day one. Don't forget Black Ice TV X2. Go there, sign up, subscribe, hit the notification so you get that for Mr. Riggs's talking with the creatives over there. He's putting it on the screen. So yeah, check that out. But big up to everyone, and we shall speak to you shortly. Keep it black, keep it real.
no doubt. And again, you know, look,
but I will let you know.
Yes, people. What's
before they would don't ever serve you. We get